Bakit kayo masyadong maluwag?
Kasi po, Your Honor, that time, wala po ba kaming nakita mga na delikado. Kaya po, kinausap natin sila ng maayos, Your Honor, para po magkaliwanagan.
Go ahead, Senator Risa.
Salamat kayo, Mr. Chair. Actually, at this point, gusto ko pa rin sundan yung statement ni General Bautista kanina na in fact, sa loob ng 1.5 taon na silang nagko-coordinate kaugnay nitong operation na ginagawa actually ng team ni na Major Indamog. Kasi dito po sa information ko, Mr. Chair, mayroong ding statement na the exhaustive efforts of the security forces against local terrorists on 25 June were made in the presence of Police Lieutenant Colonel Anayo, who was a member of the MJIA-PG. And I note, Mr. Chair, na si Police Lieutenant Colonel Walter W. Anayo ay recommended din for prosecution ng NBI para sa neglect of duty under the Doctrine of Command Responsibility. Andyan po rin ba ngayon, Mr. Chair, si Police Lieutenant Colonel Anayo para mapakonfirm natin sa kanila kung hindi ba totoo na matagal nang kino-coordinate ng Army Intelligence sa kanila itong naging operation which led to the operation ni na Major Indamog.
Andito siya, Colonel Anayo. Yes.
Magandang umaga po, Your Honor.
Sandali. Mag-swear in ka muna. Tayo ka muna.
Please raise your right hand, sir. Do you declare to tell the truth and nothing but the truth in this investigation, sir? Thank you very much, sir.
Okay, go ahead. Ikaw si Colonel Anayo.
Police Lieutenant Colonel Walter Anayo po, former COP pa ng Jolo po.
Did you attend during the Metro Jolo Interagency Task Group meeting? Nandun ka ba?
Yes, Your Honor, I was able to attend the meeting. Sir Bautista, tungkol po sa presence po ng alleged two female suicide bomber.
So sinabi rin nila na magkakaroon sila ng covert operations doon sa downtown Jolo regarding the presence of suicide bombers?
I cannot recall any, Your Honor.
Pero sinabi nila na may threat ng suicide bombing.
Yes, Your Honor.
Ngayon, nasaan ka nung 29 nung nangyari?
That time po, I was sick. That's why I wasn't able to come down at the station. So nung tumawag po yung deputy na may nangyari po, bumawa po kami agad. So, after nung 25 June meeting ninyo with the MJ-ATG, doon sa information na ni-senior ni General Bautista. Nasabi po namin sa mga tropa namin upang tulungan din po kami. Malaman din nila na may threat para sa monitoring po. Mahanap po yung kung meron man talaga yung dalawang babaeng suicide bombers po.
So, nireply mo yan sa mga tropa mo?
Yes, Your Honor. Alam po nila yon.
Jerry, alam mo yon? You're the alert team leader. Sinabihan ka ng chief of police mo na may ganun na information, na may ganung threat na suicide bombers at merong magkakaroon ng covert operations ang intelligence ng Army?
Your Honor, wala pong sinabi na magkakaroon po ng covert operation.
Pero about suicide bombers, nakarating sa'yo?
Hindi po, Your Honor. Baka po off-duty ako, Your Honor.
Yan, putol. Yan na putol ang coordination.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Risa, go ahead.
Salamat kayo, Mr. Chair. So, Mr. Chair, kino-confirm po ba ni Police Lieutenant Colonel Anayo na 1.5 taon nang nagko-coordinate sa kanila sina General Bautista tungkol sa mga Army intelligence operations against local terrorists?
Yes, Your Honor. Actually, we have a good working relationships with the AFP. si Sir Bautista, matagal na po pa rin nagkasama. Pero that time po, I don't know what really happened. Walang nasabi sa amin. Before that, kung may mga operations through the S2 po namin, kahit wala po yung sa papel, pero sa through text messages or tawag, meron po yan.
Colonel Sir, kung hindi nyo maalala ngayon kung may detalyeng ganito dun sa pulong nung June 25, pero kino-confirm nyo po ba na until the June 25 meeting, mayroong exhaustive efforts ng security forces against local terrorists na pinresent sa MJIATG meeting na nandun po kayo?
Yes, yung ma-confirm ko lang, Your Honor, yung nasabi tungkol sa presence po yung suicide bombers. And then he asked the body to help locate po yung mga dalawa na to po.
Salamat, Colonel. So malinaw, Mr. Chair, no, na hindi ito unang beses na narinig ng mga miyembro ng MJIATG yung particular concern dun sa dalawang suspected suicide bombers. Salamat, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Risa. Yun nga, yung coordination na yun, para sa akin is one thing. Kulang pa rin talaga yung sa talaga mag-coordinate ka. You should be specific at yung real time. Dahil isipin mo, nagsabi ka doon sa MATG, sa harapan ng mga civilian, may mayor pa doon, may mga konsihal, ay may mga barangay kapitan pa. Alam ko, pag covert operation, isto to intelligence ng police station mag-usap yan eh. O kaya provincial intelligence officer at saka yung brigade or whatever intelligence nyo, mag-uusap yan sila eh. Dahil para limited access lang. Pero pag sabihin mo na nag-coordinate ka doon sa isang forum na yun na may mga civilian, kung ako rin ang police na nandoon, lalo na 4 days ago, that's a very general coordination, hindi specific. Kulang talaga para sa akin yun. But anyway, lessons learned natin yun. Dapat magkakaroon ng talagang real-time coordination para, alam ko, maraming factors na on papers, yung ating mga coordination mechanisms between AAP and PNP ay napakaganda. Ang daming. Meron tayong area intelligence coordinating whatever. Basta ang dami niyan. Meron pa tayong Peace and Order Council na nagkukoordinate doon. Pero on the ground sometimes, alam nyo, trabaho ito dapat ng mga ground commander doon eh. Kung paano nila palalapitin yung kanilang mga intel operatives ng Army at saka intel operatives ng PNP para magka-close sila, para walang distrust between and among them. Alam nyo, Arde, ikaw Arde, Abo, ikaw Arde, ikaw ang PD. Sa kabila naman, nandito yung task group commander, andito si division commander. Dapat kayong nasa ground, kayong mga commander doon, pinapalapit nyo palagi yan para madali ang coordination. Walang distrust. Dahil, alam mo, nagkakaroon itong distrust eh. In the part, assumption ko lang ito, in the part sa Army, huwag tayo mag-coordinate dyan sa police. Dahil yung iba dyan, may mga relative yan na Abu Sayyaf. Baka masunog ito ang ating trabaho. So, hindi mo mawala talaga yan. Ito namang sa police, magsabi rin na huwag tayo mag-coordinate dyan sa Army kasi yung iba dyan na operative patong sa drug lord, sa mga sindikato sa droga. May mga ganun rin na mga pag-isip. So itong mga distrust na ito'y mawawala kapag kayo'y palagi nag-uusap doon sa ground. Sino-sino ba magtutulungan doon pag kayo'y naiipit? Kayo lang rin. Sino pag inatak ang police station ng Jolo, sino mag-reinforce? Yung Army. Pag Army na kailangan ng reinforcement, sino mag-reinforce? Yung PNP. bakit aabot tayo sa punto ito? Napakaliit na syudad ng Jolo, ha? Hindi, mukha ninyo. Ikaw, Colonel Chief of Police, kilala mo yung mukha ni Colonel Bautista?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yung kanyang, yung intelligence ng division, 11th ID, kilala mo ang mukha ni Colonel, sino intelligence nyo? Corley? Bakala, kilala mo mukha ni Bakala? Colonel Bakala?
Hindi po, Your Honor.
Ha?
No, Your Honor.
Kilala mo?
Hindi po. Nakita ko lang siya during nung nangyari yung incident.
Yan ang problema. Hindi kayo nagkikita eye to eye. Hindi kayo nagkikita. Tingnan mo, may isa pang intelligence officer. Sino yung isa na kasibilyan? Intelligence na police station.
Si Susulan, Your Honor.
Susulan. Intelligence operative ka. O dapat kilala mo yung mga operative ng army. Nag-uusap ba kayo? Hindi. Asida. Hindi kayo nag-uusap. Kayo lang, isang lugar lang inooperitan ninyo. Hulo-sulo. Pero hindi kayo nagkakilala. Yan ang problema ngayon natin sa coordination. Kasi kung pagbaba pa lang sa sakyan ni Indamog, kung nandoon ka, kilala mo si Major Indamog na siya ang chief ng ISU 9, sabihin mo kagad yung taga Provincial Drug Enforcement na, uy, trupa yan. Kilala ko yan. Isa intel yan. Intel ka eh. Pero wala, anong maglaseng intelligence coordination meron kayo? Ang dami nating coordinating bodies dyan. Hindi kayo nakikita? Eye to eye? Hindi kayo nag-uusap? Hindi kayo nag-coordinate?
Mr. Chair?
Sa station level po namin, sir, hindi po, sir. Pero iwan ko lang po, Your Honor, doon sa may isto po namin, sa may PPO.
Pero ikaw, makinig
Pero
ka.
doon sa
Makinig ka. Station level ka.
Yes, Your Honor.
Pero dapat lahat ng mga operative ng military na nandyan umiikot sa hulo, i-UR mo yung hulo, dapat kilala mo sa mukha.
Yes, Your Honor.
Kayo lang naman eh. Kadali naman na kikilalanin yung na intelligence. But, hindi ka nag-uusap.
Hindi, Your Honor. Bali, may kilala lang ako, Your Honor, mga officer lang po.
Sige, thank you. Yes,
Mr. Chair, magkaayo. Follow-up question po kay Police Senior Master Sergeant Pajiri. Kung totoo po na may dala nga si Major Indamog na rifle at binaril na siya ng kapulisan, bakit kailangan pang barilin yung mga kasama niya? Kung si Major Indamog lamang yung threat. Kasi yung dalawang tropa niya na nasa labas na ng sasakyan, malayo sa firearms nila.
Your Honor, hindi ko na po napansin yung sa kabilang part ng sasakyan. Basta yung nakita ko lang po, yung si Major Indamog yung bumaba at nagtaputukan. The rest, hindi ko na po nakita, ma'am.
So siguro, Mr. Chair, kung ganun po ang sagot ni Police Senior Master Sergeant Pajiri, ay kailangan talagang tanungin mamaya, no? Ano yung mga standard operating procedures o rules of engagement ng ating kapulisan pagdating sa pagsita sa mga mamamayang nasa sasakyan, no? Kasi, yung iba talaga nagtatanong Police Senior Master Sergeant Pajiri, may nagutos ba na patayin yung mga sundalo? Who called the shots? Literally, sino po yung nag-utos na open fire, tas ang nangyari ay patay yung 4, pati yung mga kasama ni Major Indamog na malayo sa mga firearms nila?
Your Honor, unang-una po, wala po kaming planong pumatay. Pangalawa po, ang nangyari po, di na po kailangan explain kasi baril na po yun, Your Honor. So, alangan yung time pa namin po kami yung baril, Your Honor. So, yun. Anyway nga sabi ko, yung makakasagot ng maayos po niyan is yung nakaharap mismo si Patrolman Mandangan po, Your Honor.
Alright, kung ganun, Mr. Chair, ay tatanungin ko rin po si Patrolman Mandangan. And unfortunately, obviously, hindi sasapat sa ating lahat yung sabihin lang na walang plano or kaya nga nagkaka-investigasyon tayo para malaman ano ba talaga yung nangyari. Patrolman Mr. Chair, maaari bang tanungin si Patrolman Mandangan? Bakit ba kailangang birilin yung dalawa na malayo nasa labas ng sasakyan at malayo sa mga firearms nila?
Okay. Before ka umalis dyan na Jerry, alam mo, ikaw ang alert team leader.
Yes, Your Honor.
Ikaw ang alert team leader. So, yung responsibility, ground commander noon, dapat na-control mo yung mga tao mo. Bakit hindi mo na-control sa magdangan na mamaril?
Unang-una po, Your Honor. Wala na, putukan na po. Kailangan sa basta yun po, putukan na po, Your Honor.
Alam ko, pag nagkaputukan, but before dapat nagkaputukan, kinontrol mo. Sinabihan mo, sitahin natin ito ha. Sitahin natin ito. Wala dapat mamatay dito.
Yun nga, Your Honor, yung purpose namin. Kaya nga po, kinatok ko yung pinto ng sakyan upang kausapin ng maayos po, Your Honor.
Oh.
Kaya after ilang minuto siguro, yun, biglaan na po, Your Honor. Kaya hindi na maiwasan. Baril niyan, Your Honor. Delikado na. Where in fact, si Patrolman Mandangan is ayaw na maulit may experience pang ma-wounded siya, Your Honor. Kaya yun, kaputukan na, Your Honor.
Sige, Mandangan, you take the... Lalabas ito, Patrolman Mandangan, na ikaw yung una nagpaputok talaga. What prompted you to pull the trigger? Ka nagpaputok ka.
Kasi Your Honor, pagbaba niya ng sasakyan, may bit-bit siyang baril. Pag angat na Your Honor, yun nagkaputukan na. Kasi Your Honor, ayoko na talaga maulit yung nangyari sa amin.
So consistent ka na may dala talagang impor si Major Indamog
Opo, Your Honor.
na hindi talaga nyo pinlanted yun doon.
Hindi po, Your Honor.
Hindi nyo kinuha sa loob ng sasakyan at nilagay doon sa kamay ni Major Indamog yung baril na yun.
Hindi po, Your Honor.
Attorney Digamo, yung witness na nagsasabi na nakita niya na pinlant yung baril, kinuha sa loob ng sasakyan, nilagay sa kamay ni Major Indamog.
Mr. Chair, negative Mr. Chair, because nung patapos na po yung barilan, may mga lumapit po ng mga pulis. Yung nakita po sa CCTV, they were trying to veer away people from the crime scene as it appears. Ang nangyari po ay may nagsabi na umalis kayo dyan, baka madamay pa kayo. Meron din pong nagsabi na trying to do this, wave his hand. Kaya ang nangyari po, ang ating mga witnesses ay pumasok na po sa Johnson's Gasul at hindi na po nakita ang subsequent na mga nangyari.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Senator, Politino mo na.
Ladies first. Ladies first.
Ladies first lang.
Salamat kayo, Chair. Salamat, Senator Francis. Tanungin, follow-up question din kay Patrolman Mandangan. Patrolman Mandangan, tinanong ko ito kanina kay Police Senior Master Sergeant Pajiri na ang sagot nila ay walang planong patayin yung mga sundalo. Wala naman akong tinanong na plano. Ang tanong ko po ay may nag-utos ba na patayin ang mga sundalo o who called the shots? Sino po ang, kumbaga may nagsabi bang open fire or kumbaga sino po ang nagsimula nitong insidente na ito ang resulta 4 na mga opisyal at tauhan natin sa Army ay patay?
Jerry.
Ay, Mr. Chair, si Patrolman Mandangan naman po.
Mandangan, meron ba? Yung nakita, narinig mo yung question ni Senator Risa?
May nagputos ba who called the shots?
Oo. Ano sagot mo? May nag-order ba sa'yo na open fire?
Wala, Your
Fire!
Honor. Wala, Your Honor. Wala.
Wala.
So talagang Mr. Chair, iwan ko muna yan sa puntong ito pero loose end talaga yan dahil dun sa information ko talagang negative for ano yon, nitrates, yung kanan at kaliwang kamay nung 4 na namatay, gunpowder nitrates examination. So, babalikan na lang po. Salamat, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Sinabi nila na hindi kayo umalis sa area. Kasi ang assumption, ang impression ng army pagdating nila, walang pulis doon na nag-kukontrol. Walang pulis na nag-kukordon sa area. Pero insisting kayo na nandun lang kayo, hindi kayo umalis. Ang bumalik sa police station, yung patrol car lang. Kayo nandun lang kayo. Bakit? Alam niyo ito eh. Procedure ito in preservation of the crime scene. Bakit yung dumating yung mga army na pinagkukuha na yung mga armas at ibang mga importanteng gamit ng kasamahan nila na namatay, hindi ninyo sila pinigilan? Bakit? Kung kayo ang nandun sa crime scene, bakit hindi ninyo pinigilan? Sarge, huwag niyong galawin yan dahil, sir, huwag niyong galawin yan dahil nasa crime scene yan, wala pang suko. Bakit hindi niyo pinigilan?
Actually, Your Honor, meron po mga officers na nagsabi na wag po pakialaman yung mga crime scene. Where in fact, kahit
Sinong officers yun?
Si Colonel Lusaria po, Your Honor. At the same time, yung mahal naman PD, andun din po sila, Your Honor. That time, nung andun yung mga sundalo, Your Honor.
So,
At yung suko pala, Your Honor.
hindi, wala pang suko noon eh.
Di,
Matay
habang-
sila si Captain Tagore, sila ang pinakauna. Crime scene. Sabi
Yes,
mo,
sir.
nandun kayo, hindi kayo umalis.
Yes, sir.
Nung pinagpupulot nila ni Captain Tagore yung mga baril doon, bakit hindi nyo sila pinigilan?
Kaya nga, Your Honor, kasi yung sa tingin ko, yung right person, yung suko, Your Honor. Yung suko po, Your Honor, ang inintay namin. Kaya hinayaan po namin sila. At saka at the same time, mahirap na po, Your Honor. Baka kung kinausap namin sila, baka magkaroon na naman ng bakbakan, Your Honor. Kaya buti na po yung hindi may part 2, kumaga, Your Honor.
Okay. Captain Tagore, for the record, ano yung mga armas na pinulot ninyo doon sa sasakyan o kaya sa vicinity ng sasakyan pagdating ninyo? Kasi hindi na na-record ng suko ito eh. Ano yung mga armas na nakuha ninyo doon na pinagmamayarian ng kasamaan ninyong namatay?
Sir, good morning, sir. Yung ang pinakialaman ko lang po doon na pinulot is yung nakalagay po doon sa sidewalk, Your Honor. Dahil
Ano yun? Ano?
yung 9mm na pistol po, Your Honor. At saka yung isang M16 po,
Kanino yun? Kanino yung NMM?
hindi ko po, sa oras po na yun, Your Honor, hindi ko po alam na kung kanino po yung 9mm na po yun.
Oh,
Your
pero ngayon, alam na ninyo kung sino may-ari doon. May mga asawa, may mga superior officer yung mga tao na yun. Nag-claim na yun sa mga gamit nila. Kanino yung 9mm na sabi mo? Sino ba nagsabi na merong silencer, suppressor? Yun ba yun?
Yan po yun, Your Honor.
So kanino yun?
Ang pagkalam ko po, Your Honor, is kay Major Indamog.
Major Damog, saan mo na
Yes, sir, Your Honor. Nasa sidewalk po, Your Honor. Nasa tapat po ng second door. Nasa yung, kung makikita nyo po yung sinasabi po ni Atty. Kanina na kuan. Yung sasakyan po ito, tapos may sidewalk po dito, tapos sa tapihan. Dito po sa sidewalk ko po napulot yung 9mm na yun, Your Honor.
So, kayong nandun, Mandangan, Pajiri, bakit nandun sa sidewalk ang baril ni nananimim ni Major Indamog?
Hindi ko na po nakita yun, Your Honor. Hindi ko nakita yun, Your Honor.
Hindi ninyo nilagay yun doon sa sidewalk?
Negative, Your Honor.
Hindi nyo kinuha sa loob ng sasakyan, nilagay sa sidewalk?
Negative po, Your Honor.
Okay. Ano pa, Captain Tagore, ano pang ibang armas na nakuha nyo doon?
Yung isa po, sir, ang nagpaalam sa akin, sir, is yung taga-air na tropa rin po nung namatay, sir. Yan po. Siya po yung nagsabi sa akin, sir, pwede ko bang kunin yung baril ko? Sabi niya, sir. Kasi baril po niya yung nakalagay po doon, sir.
Anong klaseng baril?
R4 po, sir, na pan. R4.
R4, M4, yung...
Iba po yung M4, sir, at saka R4, sir.
Basta long firearm.
Remington po, sir. Yes, sir. Parang important po, sir.
Remington.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Mayroong isang ganun kinuha mo.
Ang nagpaalam po sa akin, Your Honor, is si Corporal Salsain, Your Honor. Yung kasamahan po nung mga namatay doon sa incident, Your Honor.
Ano pa?
Yan na po, Your Honor. Ang alam ko po na na doon is si Colonel Bacala. So, humingi na siya ng clearance kay PD that time kung pwede naming kunin yung mga gamit po doon, Your Honor.
Yung UC, yung sinasabi nung...
Nakita ko po yung OC, Your Honor, hindi ko po siya ginalaw. Actually, nandun po sa loob, sa may upuan, sa may loob, nakasiksik sa may ng driver. Your Honor, yung OC po.
Kinuha rin.
Inilabas, kinuha na po nung nagkaroon na ng nilabas na po yung OC nung nagkaroon na ng clearance na po kung pwede namin kunin lahat yung laman po nung Montero, Your Honor. Kasi, Your Honor, hindi po namin ginalaw muna yung nasa loob, Your Honor. Dahil sabi nga nila may parating na soko. Pero nung medyo nalaman na namin na PNP yung bumaril doon sa mga kasama namin, so medyo nagkakaroon na po ng commotion, nagkakaroon na ng medyo hindi na pagkakakuan doon, sir, na nagpaalam po si Sir Bacala na kung pwede kunin po yung mga gamit po na importante doon sa sasakyan, which is pumayag naman po, sir, si Colonel Bawayan, sir. Sa oras na po yan.
Oh, but hindi nag-come across sa isip mo yun na this is a crime scene. This has to be preserved. Hindi pumasok sa isip mo yan?
Your Honor, sa dami pong operations na kasama ko po yung PNP, always. Marami po kaming operations na matagumpay. Kasama ko po yung mga PNP. Alam ko po na crime scene yan. But, talking po sa situation po sa Jolo, Your Honor, and then sa situation po na nangyari yung ganun sa kasama namin, na wherein ang situation po is ang pagkaalam ko is ESG yung dumanat sa kanila. It is our instinct sa mga sundalong tulad ko, sir, na i-secure yung tropa, and then second on that is i-secure yung mga government properties, kung ano man po yung mga yan, sir, Your Honor. Yan po.
Thank you. Maraming salamat.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
Salamat kayo, Mr. Chair. Follow-up question po, siguro una kay Chief PNP, tapos follow-up questions kay Attorney Degamo ng NBI. Director General Gamboa.
Yes, ma'am.
Salamat, sir. Ano po ba yung standard operating procedures o rules of engagement ng ating kapulisan pagdating sa pagsita sa mga mamamayan na nasa sasakyan? Ayaw naman kasi natin na natatakot na yung unang impulse ay not to subdue but to kill, no? So baka kailangan ba ng retraining yung ating kapulisan? Ganito rin kasi, di ba, yung nangyari sa kaso ni Corporal Winston Ragos, where it seems that the use of deadly force was not made as a last resort but as the first option. So ano po ba yung SOPs and kailangan ba kaya ng retraining?
Thank you very much, Your Honor, ma'am. On the part of the Philippine National Police, ang procedure talaga is, of course, to lagay no, self and probably show your identification, no? But kung magiging hostile ang situation, the next step would be, of course, for the PNP to be on guard of subsequent incident that's going to happen. Basically, of course, on the case of Ragos, on this case in Jolo, there's I think part of the Board of Inquiry on the part of the Philippine National Police is, sa tingin namin, ma'am, when you do an arrest, no, as a police officer, ang meron ka lang is, of course, persuasion, and the next option would be firearm. So yun yung logical sequence of how you're going to use your person in arresting a suspect or an accused. Now, part of the Philippine National Police, sabi ko nga, it's high time that we start to procure non-lethal weapons. No? There are suggestions na merong pepper spray, and then merong taser gun, and then may baton, and then yung firearm. So that logically, a police officer would have different options to the firearms. True enough, we haven't really provided in the Philippine National Police these basic non-lethal weapons. Kasi ang alam lang natin, i-persuade mo, pag hindi, what will be your next option? Is already yung firearm. So, as a way of moving forward, there's a necessity first of course, after the persuasion, the ability of policemen to assess the situation. Second would be, of course, the use of martial arts, which is again, I think not have been a mandatory or a habit of even police officers who are on the front line. And then provision of non-lethal weapons. So pwede tayong pepper spray, and then taser gun or even the baton. No? Para last resort niya yung firearm. Of course, this is granting that he has the option to think in so short a time. Exercising these different options. So ako, ma'am, on the part of the Philippine National Police, I already required the Directorate for Logistics to take a look and already program as part of basic police uniforms, especially those who are on the front line, who are usually causing arrest of persons, to have these options with him. Kasi kung wala yung options na yun nga, after the persuasion, kung hindi, the possible option would be firearm. Of course, every police officer would know that when you want to subdue, when you want to control an accused or a suspect, apply only the equal force necessary. So, yun, ma'am, on the part of the PNP ang sa tingin pong dapat gawin.
Mr. Chair, na-appreciate ko yung bahagi rin ng sagot ni Chief PNP about actually anticipating yung huling-huling tanong ko for today na what would be their recommendations para mapigilan ang ganitong mga insidente mangyari muli. But just particularly on this Jolo incident, Chief PNP, sa tingin niyo po ba ay na-exhaust yung persuasion bago umabot sa paggamit nga ng firearms or lethal weapons?
Ma'am, I'm prepared actually to deliver the specific points I want to air on the three aspects that the good chairman would like to solve or at least discuss at the end of the session.
So, Mr. Chair, I can wait for that. Opo. Mr. Chair, if I may, while we are waiting for the presentation of Chief PNP, just last follow-up questions kay Attorney Degamo sa NBI. Mr. Chair.
Right.
Salamat kayo, Mr. Chair. Attorney Degamo, batay po sa investigasyon ninyo, what and who are the major personalities and organizations involved in this incident?
Ma'am, we are looking at the members of the Philippine National Police and the Philippine Army, ma'am. Looking into also on some details of the investigation, various departments lang po naman ng parehong institution ang tinitingnan natin. We are not looking at any other organizations for that matter insofar as our investigation is involved.
In that case, Attorney, yung follow-up question ko kasi ay based pa rin sa investigation nyo, is there any link to other illegal activities such as drugs, unlawful syndicated operations o iba pa na nag-i-impact or nag-serve ng context sa incident na ito?
Insofar as the Bureau is concerned, ma'am, we would like to emphasize that the investigation actually focused on the murder, the shooting incident at Holosulu. Although the Bureau would like to say that it received information as regards allegations on illegal drugs, as also may be found in news reports dated March 2020, the Bureau would like to say and emphasize that we do not possess confirmed intelligence as regards those information received. And therefore, being an investigative body, we would like to defer commenting on those allegations, ma'am.
Loud and clear, attorney. So hindi po nagpo-possess ng evidence ang Bureau sa ngayon tungkol sa ganyang mga bali-balita. Pero hindi nyo pa rin dinidiscount totally sa kabuang investigasyon o findings ninyo, at least as of today.
As of today, ma'am, the National Bureau of Investigation do not possess any evidence as to those allegations and therefore would not say that it discounts or would not say that those are untrue. Sa punto pong ito, ang Bureau po ay would like to defer commenting on those matters, ma'am.
Salamat, attorney. And may involvement kaya dito sa insidenteng ito, yung binanggit ng isang army official kanina, forgive me Mr. Chair, hindi ko maalala kung sino exactly, pero may involvement kaya dito ang local terrorist groups? For example, mga elemento ng Abu Sayyaf group, yun yung binanggit ng isang army official kanina. Meron po bang ganong kaalaman ng Bureau sa ngayon, attorney?
Sa punto po kayo, ma'am, ang nais lang pong sabihin ng Bureau ay tungkol lang po sa nangyari na shooting incident. As regards the involvement of the group have been alleged by the members of the Philippine Army or the Philippine National Police, wala pong maibibigay na komento ang National Bureau of Investigation.
Understood, ma'am. And last po, yung pareho ko ring tanong kay Chief PNP Gamboa kanina, what would be the Bureau's recommendation to prevent similar incidents from happening? At considering din po syempre at conscious kami dyan dito sa Senado, considering the secrecy or confidentiality required in intel operations.
Ma'am?
Yes, attorney.
As
Any
regards
recommendations?
yes, as regards any recommendation coming from the National Bureau of Investigation, I would like to refer that question to our Deputy Director, ma'am, Attorney Antonio Pagatan. Thank you po.
Salamat, attorney. Chair, kung maaari daw po si attorney Pagatan.
Is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We appreciate the question of Senator Ontiveros. And on the matter of coordination, I would like to suggest that the Bureau be given an ample time to come up with comprehensive recommendations that we can fully study and come with an official report reviewed by our legal division. And we commit that after coming out report, we will
So attorney, bukod po sa binanggit niyong coordination, hindi pa po kayo handa sabihin sa aming komite yung mga rekomendasyon ng NBI para hindi na maulit yung ganitong insidente?
Ma'am, I can cite is the procedure for the NBI of law enforcement action like service of search warrant, arrest. What we do is we prepare a written coordination addressed to the local police for them to be aware of an ongoing law enforcement action by the Bureau. But on low profile activity like investigation of witnesses, we do away with the coordination because we believe that such low profile activity will not stir suspicion, do not stir attention of the public. So
In most cases, we coordinate with the PNP on law enforcement actions. As I said, service of warrants, arrests, and the like.
Salamat. I'm sorry. Yes, Attorney.
You have this in formal form, meaning written coordination. You have it received before the local PNP, and usually we cite the search warrant issued by the judge, also the general location of the operation. Not necessarily mentioning the exact location of the
Yes.
operation, but the general location of the operation.
Salamat, Attorney Pagatpat. Chair, na-appreciate ko po yung puntong sinabi nila. Lalo na yung sinabi nilang yung ganitong mga so-called low-profile operations are not expected to arouse suspicion in the public. Kaya lalong nakapagtataka na it aroused so much suspicion dito sa siyam na personnel na recommended for prosecution to the point na umabot sa mapatay yung 4 na army officials and personnel who were conducting what even the NBI might characterize as a low-profile operation. Huling follow-up question pala kay Attorney Degamo. Ma'am, are you in a position to describe the relationship of the local Jolo police and residents of Jolo?
Thank you for the question, ma'am. I am in no position to describe the relation locals or residents of Jolo and the police officers therein, ma'am. Considering that we were only there for a number of days, and therefore the National Bureau of Investigation, insofar as I am concerned, cannot issue any statement as regards that, ma'am.
Salamat, Attorney Degamo. Salamat kaayo, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Senator Tolentino.
Yes, Mr. Chair. With the permission of this honorable committee, pasensya na po kaya palabas-labas kasi ako, multitasking. Kaya hindi ko narinig yung iba, but a word struck my imagination. Narinig ko po paulit-ulit yung salita nagkaputukan kay Attorney Degamo. Are you still there? Pwede ba malaman kung talagang was there an exchange of fire from both the deceased and the accused here right now? May sagutan ba ng putok? Kasi naririnig ko kanina nagkaputukan.
Thank you for the question, Your Honor, sir. Based on the investigation conducted by the members of PNI, we noted that all shots fired recovered from the crime scene and from the caliber of Major Indamog matched the firearms of 4 subjects from the members of the Philippine National Police. That being the case, we conclude that there indeed was shots coming from the members of the Philippine Army.
So yung ma'am, yung salitang nagkaputukan, siguro mas magandang i-correct yun, nagputukan. Kasi nagkaputukan, nagkasagutan ng putok yun. Tama po ba?
Yes, sir. That is correct, sir. Nagkaputukan in two sets or 2 individuals coming.
So kasi kanina po ma'am, narinig ko yung ilang miyembro ng kapulisan ng Jolo ang sinasabi lagi nagkaputukan. So ibig sabihin nila siguro baka hindi naman kabisado talaga ang lingwahen Tagalog, yung putukan na galing sa kanilang mga armas. Tama po ba yan?
Maari pong
Mr. Chairman,
the Bureau is concerned, so far as the Bureau is concerned, are concerned, the spent cartridges or the spent shells, the cartridges matched only the firearms of the members of the Philippine National Police and none from the members of the Philippine Army.
Thank you, Attorney. Mr. Chairman, ako po siguro ay magpapaalam na. Pasensya na po kayo kanina. I may have made some mistakes. Mea culpa when I mentioned that cases were already filed. So it now behooves upon the Department of Justice to really act fast in filing the appropriate cases, as mentioned a while ago by General Gapay, that justice is really needed soon and fast. But Mr. Chairman, I still maintain, with all due respect to Chief PNP, my good friend General Gamboa, that when it comes to proceedings in the Senate, in a committee, the rules of the Senate would be plenary and comprehensive. Meaning to say, we dictate, the committee dictate who will be invited, the terms of the investigation, and with all due respect, even the dress code. So I might have made a mistake, but that was just a suggestion. Pwedeng nasabi ko siguro mag-t-shirt ng detainee, pwede naman po sigurong magsuot na rin ng civilian. Kagaya ng operation na nangyari sa Hulo, naka-civilian din naman yung iba. Having said that, Mr. Chairman, I congratulate you for initiating this committee hearing, and I personally thank all the resource persons, including Generals Gapay and Generals Gapay and Gamboa. Sana po matapos na ito, and pakatapos po nito as we move forward, strict implementation of protocols concerning joint actions, interoperability actions involving AFP and PNP should be strictly observed as we pursue one direction, having a safe and peaceful community. Maraming salamat po, Mr. Chair. I'm now preparing to go to the Senate, and I congratulate you in advance for conducting this committee hearing.
Thank you, Senator Tolentino. And how I wish andito ka. And anyway, pupunta ka rin naman dito eh. From here, may we hear from General Subihana? You have something to say? You were then the Westmincom commander, right? During the incident? Please go ahead. You have something to say?
Yes, sir. Honorable Chair and other honorable members of this joint Senate committee hearing. I am Lieutenant General Subihana, the former commander of the Western Mindanao Command when this incident happened, and I'm now the commanding general of the Philippine Army. Well, our interest really, sir, is to ferry out the truth and give justice to our four faithful soldiers. And that's why, sir, we are very happy that the National Bureau of Investigation came out with their report, and it indicates that there was really a murder being committed by the suspects. And we are praying, sir, that appropriate charges should be filed immediately. And as the former commander of Westmincom, sir, I orchestrate our campaign against the various threat groups. And I would like to manifest that the operation that Major Indamog had conducted was a legitimate one. We were targeting the two female suspects of suicide bombing, and we do not want that bombing incident happens again in Hulusulu. That's why we were really trying our best to get them and prevent them from doing their hostile plans. Now that we are here discussing about this matter, I hope, sir, that everything will be cleared. Proper charges, as what I've said, should be filed, and mechanisms, if there's a need for us to add, should be made to ensure that proper coordination is undertaken, thus preventing similar incident from happening in the future. Right now, sir, I should say that at the tactical level, we have the Metro Holo Interagency Task Group
which I created when I was the commander of Joint Task Force Sulu. The reason for being, sir, is that there should be a very good coordination among stakeholders in all our security efforts in the municipality of Jolo. And on top of that, sir, we have the JAPIC and the GPSCC as our venue for coordination. If we are trying to review those mechanisms, I think it's enough. But then for the purpose of this undertaking, if we can come up for more mechanisms to ensure that everything, all operations are done with a very close coordination, so that we are sure of addressing whatever things we want to address, like for example, preventing suicide bombers from doing their hostile plans, and some other things that are not security related in nature. Because the Metro Jolo Interagency Task Group, sir, is composed of other agencies of the government, like for example, the DSWD, the Department of Health, the DILG, and others. So hindi lamang, sir, security ang pinag-uusapan dito, kundi kung ano pa yung mga serbisyo na may pamimigay natin sa ating mga kababayan. Yun lang po ang masabi ko, sir, for this particular hearing. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you, General Subiana. You know, when you say enough, I would rather say more than enough. If only being utilized properly by our troops on the ground. Kung ginagamit naman, I can vividly recall nung ako'y provincial director, nung ako'y chief of police ng munisipyo, nung ako'y intelligence officer ng Davao City Police Office. Halos lahat ng operative ng Davao City Police at ng operative ng MIG, ng ISU, ng Air Intelligence, Naval Intelligence, ng ARTO, ng NBI, Intelligence ng PDEA, halos magkakilala yan dahil, alam nyo, kayo ba gumagawa kayo ng mga OB workshop? Di ba? Gumagawa tayo ng mga OB workshop at during that workshop, nagsama-sama tayo. Lahat ng operative ng ganito, dito, halo-halo tayo. So nagkakilala. Ewan ko kung ginagawa ba ito sa Jolo. Pwede. Ginagawa ba niyo sa Jolo ito? Yung mga activities na ito? These are mechanism to ensure na maganda yung ating coordination.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, good morning po. I'm Police Colonel Bawayam, the current OIC of Sulu Police Provincial Office. On your question, sir, yes, sir. As a matter of fact, sir, the last JAPIC, the Provincial PSR Validation Workshop, was conducted just June 12, 2020, sir, at the 11th ID, sir.
Oh, June 12. So, nagkikita kayo doon mukha sa mukha. Yan, workshop yan eh. Nagkikita kayo. So, dapat hindi na mangyari itong ganito. Very unfortunate. Anyway, General Binloan, can we hear something from you? You were the former 11th ID commander, right?
Yes, sir.
Please go ahead.
Honorable Chair, good afternoon, sir. Just like Chief of Staff and the CGP, I am very grateful for having this committee hearing, because I have a commitment with my troops also that truth shall come out and then justice be served. Actually, I also talked with the relatives of Corporal Astula. One of them is to an army, to talk with his relatives not to avenge their relative. So, ang sabi lang nila, sir, basta yung hustisya may bigay sa kanila, hindi kami gaganti. Ganun, sir. And with regards to the operations, actually, I was the one who decided to publicly announce it because when I weighed the possible outcome, when I asked the intel units if we can pinpoint the location of the two female suicide bombers, kasi sabi nila within 2 days it would be executed. When the intel group told me that they are not sure to pinpoint it before the execution of the suicide bombing, I instructed Colonel Bautista to talk with the barangay captains, the mayor, the chief of police, and then the PD to announce it. Kasi kung hindi ma-announce ito, baka pagsasabog, mas maganda yung na-compromise yung operation instead na ma-execute yung bombing, sir. So, that's why Colonel Bautista requested that meeting. Actually, sabi ko kay Colonel Bautista, tinext ko siya, baka pwede nating itukhang yung mga bahay. Because the barangay captains identified the boarding houses na pwedeng puntahan ng mga yung two suicide, yung female suicide bombers. So, yun, sinabihan ko siya kung pwede na katukin isa-isa yung mga ginawa naman nila, sir. So, with this, maraming salamat sa itong pagkandak ng pagtawag sa amin, sir, for this committee hearing, sir.
Thank you very much, General Biluan. General Gamboa is smiling while you are talking. Because I can read his mind. Sabi niya, malaking improvement yung aming produkto. Product of Alpha Company, ha? Thank you very much. Well, when you say, yung plano mo sana na itukhang yung community na suspected niyo na nandoon yung suicide bomber, alam mo kung kiniri out mo yun, baka hindi namatay yung apat. Mas maganda sana ginawa nyo at sinabihan nyo yung local police kasi expert sa tukhang itong mga police na ito. Yung house to house na pagkakatok, alam nila yung kung sino nakatira sa bahay-bahay na yan. Kinumisyon ninyo yung police, samahan nyo kami, tukhangin natin itong mga bahay na ito, usapin natin na kung sino mga nandyan sa loob. Very good sana yun kung ginawa ninyo. Yung police, maganda samahan yun. Police at army, pupunta sa mga bahay-bahay. Kakatok. Ito yung picture ng suicide bomber na babae. Baka pupunta dito, titira sa bahay nyo. Huwag yung papasukin. Parang ganun ba? It could have been a different outcome kung tinuloy nyo yan.
Mr. Chair.
Yes?
Salamat kayo, Mr. Chair. Although I think it's really unfortunate na nabanggit na naman yung tokhang kasi sa ibang related issue ay talagang mas nakadala ng bulabog, trauma sa mga mamamayan. Pero I'd like to ask follow-up question kay General Vinluan. Kasi yung appreciation ko halimbawa dun sa pagkakaroon ng Army, ng Armed Forces, ng mga grupo katulad ng yan, yung SIGINT na sinasabi sa information, ay dahil in fact meron kayong mas scientific na mga pamamaraan na tukuyin at hulihin o arestuhin yung mga identified nyo as threats, lalo na sa mga usapin tulad ng suicide bombing and other terrorist actions. Kayo po, General Vinluan, yung tanong ko po kanina kay Attorney Degamo sa NBI, sa tingin niyo po ba may involvement kaya sa shooting incident na ito yung mga local terrorist groups na binanggit din ng isang army colleague nyo kanina, may involvement kaya yung mga local terrorist groups, halimbawa mga elemento ng Abu Sayyaf group sa nangyaring shooting incident na ito?
Magandang hapon, ma'am.
Magandang hapon.
Actually, hindi ko ma-speculate kung may involvement yung local terrorist group the incident. Ang nakita namin dito, tulad ng sinabi ni Chairman, yung miscoordination lang siguro.
Salamat, General Binluan. Mr. Chair, I think I would, with all due respect, beg to disagree na matter of simple miscoordination. Kasi kahit pagtitingnan natin, halimbawa yung information na natanggap ko in relation sa recommended nga for prosecution, yung siyam na tao, for the very, 6 of them, for the very serious crime of 4 counts of murder. 9 of them pala, Mr. Chair. Sa halimbawa, yung the elements of murder are present in this case. All 4 succumbed to gunshot wounds in their back and extremities. 9 police officers admitted their involvement in the shooting incident, and the killing of the victims was attended by treachery and abuse of superior strength. I mean, actually, Mr. Chair, kahit sa isang civilian tulad ko, common sense, kung talagang nagkaroon ng barilan, exchange of fire, na pinasinungalingan na ng negative results on the nitrates, gunpowder nitrates examination, na walang gunpowder nitrates traces sa kanan at kaliwang mga kamay ng 4 na napatay. I mean, how is it possible na kung talagang may exchange of fire na yung mga tama nung 4 na napatay ay panay sa likod at saka sa extremities nila? So it really beggars belief, Mr. Chair. At talagang pakiramdam ko parang we were where we were kaninang 9 a.m. nung nagsimula tayo. Hindi pa rin nasasabi yung buong katotohanan sa atin at hindi pa natin nalalaman, Mr. Chair.
Well, Senator Risa, yung my appreciation in the testimonies given by the, how do we call them, our resource person / accused na mga siyam na police officers. Hindi naman nila sinasabi na pinutukan sila ni Major Indamog. Ang sabi lang nila, lalo na si Patrol Mandangan, na inangat lang daw yung armas, kaya inunahan niya pinutukan. So wala sinabing nagkakaputukan, walang sinabing there was exchange of fire. So that's how the chairman interprets the statements of these resource persons, which was later corrected by Senator Tolentino. Kasi pag sinabi mo nagkaputukan, exchange of fire. Pero, well, hindi man tayo pure Tagalog, itong mga tausog na ito at saka itong Bisaya na chairman, hindi gaanong sa Tagalog. Pero pag sinabing nagkaputukan, ang ibig sabihin siya nila, nagkaputukan. Marami sila pumutok. Yung ilan ba yung pulis na doon na pumutok? But not necessarily na may pumutok doon galing kay Major Indamog na bumaba sa sasakyan. So yan ang aking appreciation doon. Inunahan nila nung umangat yung baril. That's how I understand it.
And I appreciate the interpretation of the chair, but citing also yung ibang information na in fact, nakataas yung kamay ni Major Indamog, tinataas pa daw nila yung kanilang t-shirt para ipakitang ni walang nakasukbit na baril, let alone a long arm or a heavy firearm. Kaya ako po sinasabi, Mr. Chair, na kahit sa kung patapos yung unang pagdinig na ito, na meron tayong mga nalaman pero meron pang mga importanteng hindi natin nalalaman, Mr. Chair.
Well, sa ngayon, they stand by their statement na may dalang baril daw si Major Indamo pagbaba. So doon na yan sa korte nila isettle dahil according to the investigation of the NBI, wala man talaga. Walang dalang baril si Major Indamo. Tanong na natin sila kung wala ba talagang dala, sabi nila may dala. So that remains to be seen. Basta kinlaro ko sa inyo, kayo siyam, na you can be cited for contempt kung kayo ay nagsisinungaling dito. Ha? Alam niyo yan. Dapat magsasabi kayo ng totoo. Okay? Thank you. Anymore, General Gambo is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd just like to recap on my impression of this Senate hearing. But before I lay down my thoughts on the three main topics that you want tackled for this committee hearing, I want to make it straight that the revelations made by the National Bureau of Investigation is on the side of the evidences that they have gathered. This may be necessary in filing the appropriate case as they have determined murder case against the 9. But please take note that at the time that the NBI conducted their investigation, the 9 policemen from Jolo did not air their side because probably upon the advice of their counsel. So the conclusions or maybe the basis of NBI in filing the appropriate charges to these 9 are based on the evidences, both material and testimonial, that they have gathered in the course of their investigation. Now, so I suggest that that portion of criminal charges will be tackled by the courts. Let them determine whether the 9 policemen are really guilty of those the charges against them. On a larger perspective, on the
Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair. Before the Chief PNP continues, pwede bang immediate follow-up question lang dun sa most recent point nila?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Chief PNP, nabanggit po kasi ninyo yung mga counsel nung mga recommended for prosecution. Sino po yung mga abogado ng if ever magiging respondent PNP? Meron po bang formally nag-enter ng appearance nila as defense counsel?
For the information of the committee, Mr. Chairman, we have 2 lawyers here who have assisted the 9 from the very beginning. Maybe introduce them.
You are attorney Meltino Haujan Sibulan? Sino ito? Sibulan. The other one is attorney Meltino Sajili. Gadong. Yes, Senator Risa.
Salamat kayo, Mr. Chair. And lastly, kay Chief PNP, pero administratively po ba, nakasuspend po ba yung siyam na recommended for prosecution?
No.
Thank you, Chief PNP, and thank you, Mr. Chair. May I just ask through the committee, bakit hindi sila administratively suspended man lang, considering na gaya ng sinabi ni na AFP Chief of Staff, halos 2 buwan na mula nung insidente at may ganitong mga sinabing ulat ni NBI Attorney Tegamo kanina na they are in fact recommended for prosecution on very serious crimes of murder, planting of evidence, neglect of duty under the doctrine of command responsibility. Kasi po, Mr. Chair and Chief PNP, kung hindi sila administratively suspended, so they are still performing their functions almost 2 months after this shooting incident?
Can you respond, Chief PNP?
They are not administratively suspended because we cannot do so. It is a due process of law. Ang sinabi ko nga kanina, Mr. Chair, the Chief PNP's power or either regional director or the provincial director is only restrictive custody. That's the most that we can do under our regulation. We cannot even detain them. We cannot even preventively suspend them unless there's due process. So what happens is that charges are filed, investigated, and if they are found guilty of the administrative charge, then they can be suspended. But there is no such thing as suspension prior to any administrative proceeding. We cannot do that in the PNP. And probably that's one of my points on my recap.
So, nakuha mo si Teresa?
I'll just follow up after the presentation of the Chief PNP kasi hindi ko ma-imagine na halos 2 buwan, Mr. Chair, pagkatapos ng ganyang shooting incident na 4 ang napatay at hanggang ngayon naghihintay ng katarungan yung mga pamilya nila bukod pa sa Philippine Army at AFP ay ni walang pagbabago sa status nila or ina-administer pa rin nila yung mga duties nila bilang kapulisan after this shooting incident, Mr. Chair. I will wait for the
Hindi
presentation.
na sila nagpe-perform as police na preventive ano tawag mo? Yung sinabi mo kanina?
Restrictive custody.
Restrictive thing. They are confined. They are restricted to a certain place in the national headquarters, but they are not detained.
Nasa restrictive custody po ba sila ngayon, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
They are under restrictive
Effective,
custody.
after nangyari, the following day, right? After nung nangyari, the following day, they were placed under restrictive custody by the national headquarters.
Salamat, Mr. Chair. Then I await with the committee, I await the presentation of Chief PNP kung ano pa kaya yung tingin nilang rekomendasyon para hindi na muling mangyari yung ganitong insidente.
Yeah, thank you. But before we hear the Chief PNP, I would like to ask Atty. Cambulo, the ES, if he has something to say. Natanggap na ba niya yung recommendation galing from NBI in order for him to proceed the administrative aspect of this case? Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Now, we received the investigation report of the NBI last week, while the administrative proceedings on the pre-charge investigation, similar to the fiscal preliminary investigation. But upon the processes of the counter affidavit and examinations of the statement of the witnesses, we found out that there are other respondents to be charged, like the Sergeant Samsi, the Comel of the PPO, because he mishandled the flash alarm that would prevent sana kung kung ginawa pa niya yung trabaho niya na inform yung mga unit Montero XSL 259 yung ginagamit ng mga nasawi. Sana ma-prevent po yun at malaman sana na yun ay friendly forces. And then pangalawa po, the additional charges against the Chief of Police, although he was absent during the time, because according to the statement of the head of the Metro Jolo Interagency Task Force, that there was a prior coordination. But then, as testified by the personnel of the Jolo Police Station, there was no relay of the informations and no directives to the intelligence officers, Sergeant Tusulan, to coordinate with their counterpart of the Armed Forces of the Philippines so that these things can be prevented. And another respondent, Your Honor, the three personnel manning the checkpoint, which are superior officer than the personnel involved in the shooting incident, who allowed to take over and control the checkpoint, Your Honor. Because we have standing TOP, standard operating procedures regarding the conduct of the checkpoint. If he did not allow this personnel doon sa involved ng shooting incident, they were apprehensive, baka sila ay tinatrabaho sana Your Honor mapiprevent din siguro itong incident nito. That's why we include in our charges and we're waiting with our regional offices in Rias Barn to look into the matter so that they can charge them jointly with the personnel which was recommended by the NBI to be charged. And after that, Your Honor, that's the time that once we file the formal complaint against these respondents, that's the time that under the role of the NAPOLCOM, governing the dispositions of administrative cases against respondent uniformed police personnel, that's the time, Your Honor, that the Chief PNP can preventively suspend the respondent, Your Honor. As of now, Your Honor, as mentioned by the Chief PNP, the only power that he can exercise is the restrictive custody, meaning they are still police. They will perform duties as a policeman, but their movement is restricted to ensure that their presence during investigation is nandyan po sila, Your Honor. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Attorney Triambulo. I would agree with you na yung si Sergeant Samsi, yung operator ng radyo, kung may due diligence lang sana siya, yung nangyari doon, meron pala siyang counterpart doon na army. Radio room. Nung natanggap niya yung information, kung sinabihan sana niyo yung army, pakitanong nga doon sa headquarters niyo kung sa inyo ba itong sasakyan, itong Montero na ito na hinahabol ng mga taga-PDEO. Sana na-resolve na kagad yun noong 26 pa lang ng gabi. Tapos na yun, hindi naabot sa 29 yung suspitsahan nila. Dapat sinabihan niya yung sarhinto doon. Check nga nyo doon sa inyo sa army kung sa inyo ba ito. Pero hindi niya sinabihan yung army. So doon tayo nagkulang. Well, may gusto ka sabihin na General Bautista? Please go ahead.
Sir, Your Honor, sir, that tech ban, that Montero, has been in Jolo, Sulu, more than 3 months doing surveillance jobs there. That tech ban, sir, is not new in that place. The operation, sir, was not entirely, for my end, sir, was not entirely an intelligence operation. It is a raid operation to be conducted on that fateful day, 29. The tech ban is just a component of my intelligence that I got. And that tech ban should be there in the place to determine the exact location of the two bombers by means of the technology we have. Unfortunately, yun po yung nabangga ng hapon na yun. But that tech ban said that Montero said parked in front of the police station of Jolo on the Sunday 28 because we believe that June 28 was the D-Day for the bombing that coincide the of the first Filipino bomber that conducted also in Sulu, of which we suspect the wife of Norman, yung first Filipino bomber, will conduct the said bombing. So that tech ban was doing its intel job, the tech intelligence more than 3 months in Jolo. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, salamat kayo Mr. Chair. Follow-up question lang kay General Bautista. Sir, sabi po ninyo, 5 months nang 3 months na nasa Jolo yung Montero na iyan, nasakay ni na Major Indamog that fateful day. So ibig sabihin, hindi na siya bagong sasakyan kahit sa kaalaman ng PNP. At hindi dapat sila parang nagsuspend siya doon. kahit dumaan sa checkpoint at kahit tumuloy sa police station. Yun ba yung implikasyon ng sinabi nyo na ilang buwan nang andun sa area sa Jolo yung Montero na iyan, sir?
Yes, ma'am. Yung ibig kong sabihin, ma'am, na from May 24, we conducted 6 operations na combat operation or raid operation. Kasama po yung Techman. So, from that May 24 hanggang 29, sir, nandyan po yung Techman. Nakikita po yun ng halos lahat ng security forces.
So, Mr. Chair, that's very important kasi ibig sabihin, wala dapat reasonableng dahilan na pagsuspetsahan, let alone hindi paniwalaan kung nag-identify sina Major Indamog bilang tropa at tutukan ng baril, no? As we've heard in the testimonies of the earlier resource person. So, General Bautista, the mere fact that sina Major Indamog introduced themselves, coordination na po yun, hindi po ba?
Yes, ma'am.
So, coordination na po yun. So, any reasonable person, lalo na po kayong mga high military officials at kahit kaming mga civilian, magtatanong talaga kami, ano bang intensyon nitong lahat? So, what was the decision point? May pwedeng magtanong na, was it ego tripping? Or yun na nga, yung tinanong ko rin kina Police Senior Master Sergeant Pajiri kanina, may utos ba? No? Who called the shots? May utos ba na patayin yung mga sundalo? Do you have any thoughts about that, General Bautista?
Pareho, ma'am, sa inyo, ma'am, malaking question mark po nangyari. Hindi po namin nakalain na mangyari yun, ma'am, because every time na we conduct operation, smooth naman po yung worry lang namin, ma'am, is leakage of the information. Kaya nga, ma'am, nag-decide si General na kalat yung information. We are tracking the suicide bombing by yung technology we have. Kaya po yung meeting po doon sa munisipyo ay strictly emphasize na we are tracking the suicide bombing by sa cellphone. Kaya nga po naghumingi kami ng tulong sa lahat ng mga barangay captains na ituro sa amin yung yung mga boarding house na possible hiding place nila. Kaya po yung umaga po yun, lumakad po yung mga barangays and mga tanod and mga, I don't know kung may police doon, but yung sundalo, inaituro na lugar. Pinitahan nyo po yung lugar po. Doon po yung nakita doon sa conversation sa text na may pumunta mga tao doon malapit sa lugar niya. So, pinadeploy namin po yung deck van doon sa area para ma-pinpoint exact. It so happened na across mga 20 meters lang, there's also a police station ng Patikul po sa Maubo. Kaya safe na safe yung tropa doon na magtambay. But hindi ko lang po akong, I'm not sure what had happened. Ang instruction po doon to stay there and wait for the uniform troops to cordon the place and we will do the raid. But unfortunately, that van went out of the area. Kaya po na checkpoint po siya doon sa may bus-bus po. And eventually doon sa police station and tapat ng fire station.
Okay. Salamat, General Bautista. And Chair, ipapanote ko na lang po, please, Chair, na very consistent po yung mga sinasabi sa atin ni na General Binluan, General Sobejana, and now General Bautista, no, na sustained yung kanilang coordination tungkol sa kanilang sinasagawang operations. And even that very seemingly small but I think important detail na isang buwan na pamilyar na site sa area yung sasakyang iyon and should not have raised suspicions sa checkpoint, let alone mag-degenerate into mapatay yung 4 na army officers and personnel. So bumabalik talaga sa tanong, no? Yung ano yung intention nitong lahat, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, thank you. Noted, Senator Risa. Andito naman lang yung Chief of Police. Tanungin kita, kilala mo ba yung technical band ng ginagamit nila na Gray Montero? Identified mo ba yun na belonging to the Army?
No, Your Honor. Di po namin kilala yun na belong sa Army po.
Kayong siyam, sino sa inyo nakakilala doon sa technical band na yun, na Gray? As belonging to the ISU. Kilala nyo? Sino nakakilala?
Negative, Your Honor.
Ikaw, intelligence sa Susulan. Si Susulan. Intel ka ng Municipal Police Station. Kilala mo yung ban na yun na Gray as belonging to the ISU? Hindi. Okay. Thank you. So, kulang pa rin. Anyway, you want to, you have the floor, General Gamboa, for your piece.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. So again, as I have stated, let the criminal case be taken up by NBI, which we will fully respect kung ano yung magiging results, and if appropriate information will be filed in court. At sabi ko na nga, if warrants of arrest or commitment orders will be issued to our personnel, I'd be willing to surrender them to the courts. Second, on the investigation on the administrative side, you have already heard the Inspector General said his piece on the sequence of events that's going to undertake in order to file administrative case in against the 9 policemen. Now, sir, I'd like to disabuse the minds of all those who are here today. Let us go on the intent of the committee. First, who triggered the shooting? Or probably, what triggered the first shot? Of course, that's iba yung appreciation, sir, pagdating sa criminal, kasi based on evidence yun. But ako, for one, I interviewed these 9 policemen from Jolo kasi I feel responsible being the father of the PNP and tried to put myself on their shoes. What was the prevailing atmosphere at those times on June 29? So meron silang kwento, tama yung sabi ni Senator Ontiveros, that there's a drug angle. No? Kaya kung makita nyo kanina, repeatedly, sinabi ni Mandangan na ayoko nang ma-ambush ulit. On June, an operation was conducted na akala nila is may mag-surrender. Pero parang ang conclusion nila na frame up sila. And then, may namatayan tayo ng police doon, who is a police lieutenant, the team leader of the Provincial Drug Enforcement Unit of Jolo. And on that same incident, kasama ito si Mandangan. And Mandangan was even cornered. No? Good enough, dumating yung reinforcement, pero natamaan siya. So that was precisely, makita niyo yung expression ni Mandangan, ano yung sitwasyon at that time nakaharap niya doon yung ISU people. Anong nangyari before that? So merong angle na ganyan. No? So anyway, I don't need to elaborate on it. Pero ang sana ang isipin natin, merong ongoing also drug enforcement campaign ang Philippine National Police all throughout the country. And Jolo is not exempted to this. That's why part of my directive to my lower units is to really come up with link diagrams of all those people who are involved. No? And tungkol dito sa drugs. And Jolo is not exempted. There are drug pushers, there are drug users in Jolo. So yun sana yung, kaya makita nyo kung bakit na-involve itong 3 PDEO. hadn't it come into your mind, bakit nandyan sila? Bakit of interest sila? Diba? Bakit? Kasi kung checkpoint lang yon, naghingi ng reinforcement, kung plain law enforcement yon, wala sanang hassle, no? Pero bakit nandoon si PDEU? Because they had some interest on those circumstances present on that day that happened. May interest din ng AFP. Meron kayong hinahanap na suicide bombers. No? That's why, sa conclusion dito sa lateral, as what has been concluded by the Joint Board of Inquiry, magaling tayo sa sulatan. No? Ang dami, since time pa ata ni Daipo, no? May maraming mga kasulatan nandito. Ang daming coordination, ang daming sulat. No? But sila na mismo sa BOI nagsabi na when it comes to tactical, require a different coordination. That's precisely the point why this thing happened. No? Now, yun yung lateral coordination. Now, second,
Mr. Chair.
Ma'am, allow me to finish because it will answer your question a while.
Mr. Chair.
Did somebody push for this to happen? Did somebody dictate to the policemen, patayin niyo yung mga army? Immediately after that, nung incident, nag-usap kami ni Chief of Staff Santos. And there were speculations of like that. Anong ni-require sa akin ni Chief of Staff? Bok, kunin natin lahat ng cellphones ng Siam para makita natin kung merong thread doon na talagang pinlano nila. Right away, the cell phones of these 9 people are in the custody of the crime laboratory for forensics. Because I also want to establish and free my mind that this is premeditated. Because they cannot excuse themselves pag nakita sa cellphone na pinag-usapan nila at pinlanuhan nila. But right away, we surrendered the cell phone of the 9 people upon the request of the Chief of Staff. All the firearms were also surrendered. Now, I don't know, kasi ang alam ko, wala ni isang firearm na nasa armed force, na galing sa armed forces, na napunta sa aming crime lab. Wala kaming hawak, no? Because the armed forces did not surrender it to the crime lab. For reasons maybe, as stated by Captain Taguire, baka ASG, etc. So, okay, may excuse tayo bakit wala sa PNP. But these are material evidence also in the course of the criminal investigation of NBI. Diba? Although, narinig ko kanina, I don't know if it's right, that all the shells recovered were all accounted for PNP rifles. Well, that's on the criminal part. Now, again, probably last question, sir, is should we have more laws in protecting crime scene? Probably we should take a second look to that. No, that kasi ang warning ko lang sa lahat, the degree of proof that is required for a criminal conviction is proof beyond reasonable doubt. Once there is very simple, a very slight doubt in the course of the investigation, you may lose the entire case. And tampering a crime scene could be very material. I'm not telling that it's a good part of the defense, but it can affect. That's why the preservation of the crime scene is very important. Kahit nga sa drugs yung chain of custody pa lang, mabalik ka lang ng isa, wala na, acquitted na si, because the required proof is proof beyond reasonable doubt. Now, what are the innovations I did? Probably partly ito, yung sabi nga, 2 months na ito, wala pa ring administrative charge. When I sat down as officer in charge, on the usual 30-day pre-charge investigation, kasi sa PNP, pre-charge muna, there's probable cause, then you investigate. No? That's the time na mag-start yung role for an administrative case. Now, ang pre-charge ni-reduce ko from 30 days to 10 days. Gusto ko sana 5 days. Pero umangal talaga yung Directorate for Investigation. Sabi, hindi siya talaga pwede. Okay, 10 days. So that's a very good reduction in terms of number of days you're supposed to to resolve a case on a pre-charge level. Ano pang ginawa nating iba? By law or by regulation, you're supposed to receive administrative charges in 60 days. But that is, I said, the maximum. What is the minimum? 15 days. Kung magaling ka na summary hearing officer, actually you can rule upon an administrative charge for 15 days. So sabi ko, let's make the former minimum now the maximum. So now, in the PNP, you are supposed to resolve administrative charges in 15 days from the 60. So from the previous 90 days from pre-charge to actual hearing, we reduced it to 25. And that's the most that the PNP can do in terms of improving our administrative procedures. But again, on the criminal, ito na yung babalikan ko, sir. That the Philippine National Police, known din yan kay Chairman, we don't have the power to detain, no? Or even to place in custodial investigation our policemen. We cannot detain. Yung aming PNP detention cell, we cannot use that for the policemen. Not unless they are charged criminally. Why? Because ang powers lang ng Chief PNP is only restrictive custody. Ano ang sinasabi ng restrictive custody? Ilagay mo siya sa kampo, gwardiyahan, and when he goes out, he must be escorted. Yun lang ang kayang gawin ng Chief PNP based on the regulations that we have. So probably way forward on legislation, dati kasi may power ang Chief PNP to detain in 6975, I think, but that has been removed since then. Pwedeng ibalik lang, no? So that meron ng powers ang kahit sa Chief PNP lang and later pwedeng ma-delegate on the power to detain. So in the entire perspective of the committee's hearing, these are my points, sir, na we should ponder upon. And we hope that the chairperson, this honorable committee, would see that as an future legislation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Please, before I recognize you, Senator Risa,
Salamat.
yeah, please include that in your recommendations. Lalo-lalo na yung power ng Chief PNP to detain na according sa'yo, was present in 6975. Ibalik natin yan. Kasi unlike the AFP, you can detain your personal book, right? Based on the articles of war, conduct and becoming of an officer, pwede ka agad na ikulong, di ba? So, kasi ang PNP sa civilian in nature. At 8551 tinanggal nga yung power to detain. So, ipakisama yan. Mamisa. Thank you. Thank you very much. Senator Risa?
Salamat kaayo, Mr. Chair. Since nakapagparang summing up na si Chief PNP dun sa sabi nga nila, impressions nila sa hearing natin, could I please also ask the Armed Forces of the Philippines, yung summation din nila ng impressions nila sa buong incident na ito at pati na yung ating hearing, Mr. Chair, para maponder upon din natin, committee members, yung kanilang perspective dito.
Thank you, thank you. I just would like to remind this committee. Matandaan ninyo kanina, tinanong ko yung crime lab. Bakit si Patrolman Mandangan na ang daming pinutok based on the recovered spent shells na per ballistic examination, nag-cross match doon sa kanyang baril. At siya mismo, inamin niya na pinutukan niya yung Montero. So, pero lumabas sa paraffin test na negative siya for gunpowder nitrates. Hindi rin malayo, I am not putting accusation doon sa namatay, na posible rin na wala sila, negative sila, pero posible rin na nakaputok sila. That's analogy lang ang gusto kong palabasin dito, na negative sila lahat. So ang assumption natin, pero Senator Risa, di ba, negative sila ng gunpowder nitrates, can we safely assume na hindi talaga sila pumutok ng baril? Itong si Patrolman Mandangan, pumutok ng maraming bala, pero nag-negative siya sa paraffin test. So, inconclusive yung paraffin test as a means of determining whether or not he has fired his firearm. Yun lang, I just want to members of this committee regarding those technical aspects of this case.
Well, Mr. Chair, kahit po bilang isang sibilyan ay matimbang yung binibigay kong bigat sa isang NBI report kahit sa mga technical matters na iyon. So kung maaari, Mr. Chair, pwede ba nating marinig yung summing up din ng Armed Forces sa kanilang impressions sa incident na ito at sa ating ding hearing today so that we can also ponder upon them, Mr. Chair?
Yes, do you have any? Okay, go ahead, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much, Senator Risa. Well, on our part, I've heard many speculations during the deliberation. There are a lot of speculations. That's why, on the part of the armed forces, we urge the immediate filing of murder, planting of evidence, and neglect of duty, as recommended by NBI to the proper courts immediately. We have been waiting for 2 months already, and justice delayed is justice denied. So we expect immediate filing of the recommendations and charges found out by the NBI during their initial investigation. Then also, as apparent in the comments and observations of my colleague in the armed forces, we find this case as very unique. Ibang klase ito. Our coordinations with the PNP, if you would compare it in all areas nationwide, very effective. Nandiyan nga, minention na may JAPIC tayo, Joint AFP-PNP Intelligence Committee. Meron tayong, that is replicated down to the battalion, and even coordination between among our intel units is very close. Yung intel fusion natin, very effective. In other areas, ito lang, even sa Jolo, for several years, okay naman tayo eh. But for this particular operation, bakit ganito nangyari? There's something wrong here. That's why, if we file this in court, we are also hoping that the real motive, intent, of the killing of the 4 army personnel should come out. The truth should come out. Nag-speculate tayo, may drug angle dyan. Okay, sige, baka nga may drug angle dyan. O baka may nasagasaan din yung tropa namin. Hindi natin alam. So those are pure speculation. O baka may nag-utos ka, napirahin niya, projectin nyo. So those are pure speculation, and that's why we are requesting that cases be filed in court para lumabas na yung totoo. Because we find this very unusual, very unique. Sa ibang area, effective, napakaganda ng samahan natin. And yung close coordination between the AP and PNP has produced significant accomplishments, not only against local terrorists, NPAs, but as well as the anti-criminality campaign natin, napakaganda. Ito lang talagang makakapagpaka. That's why we are also in a quandary by this. And lastly, with the indulgence of PNP, may we recommend that in crafting spot reports, let us be factual. Let's state just what happened, and wala nang cover up or kasi in both cases, Ragos and ito, yung Jolo killing. Sa spot report pa rin, may ano na eh. We find it misleading, full of inconsistencies. Kasi I myself, I was just commanding general of the Philippine Army. On the night of June 29, I asked my people, and sabi nila, what really happened? Ba't ganyan nangyari? Yung inside account of what really happened. And there were also witnesses already that we interviewed. So we find the spot report fabricated, full of inconsistencies and misleading. So that's why right there and then we requested NBI to assist in the investigation because doon pa lang sa spot report, we are in the feeling that we want to get an impartial investigation out of this. So we thank NBI for that. So yan nga man, when we craft spot reports or all reports for that matter, let's be factual. Wag natin cover up or because that's not cover up misdeeds, violations or infractions of the law committed by any person, even AP, PNP or civilians. And they should be charged accordingly. And one more thing, and being law enforcers and persons in authority, that is an aggravating circumstance on our part when committed by PNP and AP personnel. So it is really an aggravating circumstance on our part. So, Mr. Chair, yun lang po, we're requesting for the immediate filing of the cases as recommended by NBI. And with that, we consider this unique. And we hope that the real motive and intent behind what happened would really surface in court as we go through the investigation. And we will request that in crafting of court reports and any report for that matter should be factual. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, General Gapay. You say unique, the situation is unique. I agree with you. This hearing is also very unique. The chairman is your classmate. The chief of staff of the AAP, the number one man of AAP is your classmate. The chief PNP is also your classmate.
Mr. Chair, your committee member is also a misstaff. That's why I feel so strongly about this, Mr. Chair.
Sorry, Senator Tiberos. Senator Risa Tiberos also is our classmate. She's the wife of our late classmate, General Barakil. Kaya nga, I am wondering why, bakit nagkaganito. Very unfortunate. Bakit umantong sa ganito na we all belong to the same class. So, having said that, yung lang, I would like to follow up the statement of General Gapay to NBI na sana you can dig further, deeper into the motive of the case. Dahil nga, kung basihan mo yung katawan ng mga namatay, ang daming tama. Kung palagay natin, lang yung misencounter, ang daming tama, niinda mo, pati sa likod.
Mr. Chair?
Parang may galit or what? I cannot, ako naman, speculation din itong akin. Dahil nga, binasihan ko lang yung nakita ko sa report ninyo, ang daming tama. Speculation ko sa akin, so dapat you can dig deeper.
Mr. Chair?
Yes,
thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, one last follow-up question.
Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick follow-up dun sa closing statement ni Chief of Staff Gilbert Gapay. Ano pong ibig niyong sabihin dun sa cover-up?
So, Mr. Chair. So, when we read the spot report, we already have an overview of what really happened, the inside story. So, kagaya nung we find it really fantastic, unbelievable na tumakas yung sasakyan, nagkabulan, then flag down, bumaba, nagkatutukan yung apat, bumaba, nag-ground, then there was a firefight. This encounter nga yung terminology. So we find that unbelievable because they know the identities of the people inside riding that vehicle. Checkpoint pa lang, alam na nila na tropa yun, military yun. And earlier on, alam din ang partners natin in the PNP na may ongoing operation. And then based on the report of the NBI, talagang there's no fight, and there was no provocation on the part of the 4 Army personnel, and no unlawful aggression. Then and there is an element of treachery. So really, we find it was a deliberate act. There is an intent to kill, although we really cannot ascertain the motive. But definitely there's an intent to kill. Nakita nyo na yung tama, nasa likod lahat eh. Diba kung bakbakan yan sa harap ng ano. Because our personnel knew na walang threat. Kasama natin ito, kabaro natin ito. Okay, pwede natin kausapin ito. That's why we find it very unique. That's why nung mabasa namin yung report, bakit ganito na nangyari? Parang may cover-up na self-defense, may angle na self-defense na bumawi lang kami dahil tinutukan kami, may mga baril din eh. So, but on the initial report of NBI, nakita naman natin yung which we find factual naman. So, yung circumstantial would point to those elements of treachery, no provocation, and of course, no unlawful aggression on the part of our person. That's why we find the initial report as fabricated and full of inconsistencies and really misleading. That's why, and also sa Ragos case, ganun din eh. Yung report, na may baril si Ragos, na tapos binali na lang right there and then. So, ganun din, wala naman unlawful aggression on the part of that retired army personnel na may PTSD pa. And that would warrant shooting and killing right there and then. So, sa spot report, ganun din. So, parang sa report pa lang, medyo questionable and there's apparent cover-up. That's why in both cases, we immediately sought the help of NBI dahil pag ganun na kasi ang report natin, there's doubt already that we will have an impartial investigation. So, and Mr. Chair, yun din, we find it, PNP would be investigating misdeeds of their own, parang minsan kasi nandun na rin yung opportunity and na magkaroon ng bias. So, yun na naman, Mr. Chair, we find because we really find those reports as fabricated and full of inconsistencies.
Yes, thank you, General
Salamat kaya, Mr. Chair. Salamat sa Chief of Staff. I think, Mr. Chair, with those, yung pagsuma nilang dalawang institusyon, mas lalong naging malaman yung hearing natin and hopefully will be helpful and with the lead of the NBI report, of course, nag-groundbreak para sa atin dito and moving forward into the cases. Mr. Chair, may I just make a brief closing note?
Will it be okay with you kung pasalitahin mo natin si Atty. Pagatpat?
Of course, Mr. Chair.
Sige, thank you. Thank you. Please, Atty. Pagatpat.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Admittedly, when we filed our recommendation before the Department of Justice, we were not able to go down as to the identification of the motive, because we believe in the principle of law that when the culprits or the subjects are positively identified by credible witnesses and supported by other physical evidence, motive is not necessary for conviction. But in compliance to the order of the chairman, we will reopen the investigation, if only to determine the motive of the killing in this case. I would like also to thank the armed forces of the Philippines, particularly the Philippine Army, for trusting the National Bureau in the conduct of the probe, and also for the Philippine National Police for the unfettered investigation by the NBI. I would like to assure the public that the NBI, like any other self-respecting institution, will always perform its mandate without fear or favor. We are fully aware of our obligation to the nation, to the people, that we will investigate, render justice, and ferret out. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Atty. Pagatpat. Kaya nga, gusto kong establish talaga sa hearing na ito, what triggered the first shot? Bakit nagkaputukan? You know why? para ma-establish kagad natin ang motive. Dahil may mga haka-haka na may previous grudge daw, nagalit na yung police dito sa mga operative, kaya talagang pinatay. So gusto kong klaruhin para ma-establish natin sino unang pumutok at bakit siya nagpaputok. Kaya tinanong ko si Mandangan kanina, who is supposedly the first one who fired the first shot. Kasi, ang motive kasi is pwedeng imputed, pwedeng totoo. Kasi kung ako, nag-retired ako na police. Not for the defense of this policeman. Ako lang, may objective na pagtingin sa situation. Itong mga pulis na ito, napatayin yung mga sundalo sa loob ng sasakyan. Doon pa lang, sa checkpoint, pagharang nila, niratrat na nila yun. Niratrat na nila yun. Hindi na nila dadalhin sa police station. Bakit pa nila dadalhin sa police station para doon patayin? Hindi naman siguro ganun ang mag-isip ang police. Patayin mo yung mga tao, dadalhin mo pa sa police station, doon mo na pinatay sa kalsada. Di ba? Kaya nga tinatanong ko, bakit nagkaputukan doon na sa crime scene? Dahil nga, in the first place, yung kung wala yung spirit of cordiality ninyo, nung nagsabi na trupa, inibitahan niyo sa estasyon, dapat kung hindi talaga kayo naniwala doon, dinisarmahan na niyo doon. Kinuli na niyo, disarmahan niyo, kinula ng armas bago nila sa estasyon. Pero inibitahan niyo sa estasyon. Ako, this is just my honest objective na pagtingin ha. Kung may plano itong mga pulis na patayin talaga yung mga sundalo na yun, doon pa lang sa checkpoint para ma-justify na nila pagpatay. Niratratan nila yun doon. Hindi mo nadali sa station. Dahil pag dinala mo sa station, napakalaking investigation yan kung doon mo patayin sa station. Kung meron kang intensyon na patayin. Yun lang. That's my honest lang being a retired policeman. Yung akin lang thoughts lang. Kaya gusto ko talaga ma-establish yung first shot. What triggered the first shot? Kasi after the first shot, we are all operatives. Lahat tayo. Matagal tayo sa field. Alam natin yan, after the first shot, hindi mo na masabi yung command and control na, ceasefire! Kayo muna dyan. Dito, hinto ko na. Wala na. Kahit anong blame mo sa team leader, ito si Pajiri. Sabihin ko sa iyo, ikaw team leader, dapat may command and control ka. Doon sa enkwentro na yun, hindi mo na masabi yan pag may isa pumutok. Ratrata na yan, bakbakan na yan. Kaya nga gusto kong establish sino nag-fire ng first shot. Kasi that led to everything. Kaya namatay yung apat dahil yung unang pumutok na yan. Yun lang sa akin. I just want to, para ang motive, klaruhin natin yung motive, para hindi ito, this is not in the defense of the policeman. Sa akin lang, sharing my own objective na pagtingin, kung may intensyon ka talagang patayin yung one, pero yun nga lang, may intensyon kang papatayin, doon na sa checkpoint, niratrat mo na yun. Pero ito nga lang, bakit maraming tama afterwards? Yung nga, puro likod pa ang tama. Yun ang mga dapat masitil natin ito ngayon. Ratrata na, tumba. Bakit pa Mandangan? Bakit mo tiwasan yung natumbangan na si Major Indamog? Tama, dito sa likod, natumba na. According to the witness, tinira mo pa. So, that's something to be, kaya magda-doubt yung tao. Bakit ganun? Sa daming tama nila sa katawan. You want to say something? Mandangan? Bakit ang daming tama niya? Inamin mo man na ikaw yung paputok. Anong masabi mo? Bakit ang daming tama? Wait.
Your Honor, ko muna masasagot yung tanong mo, Your Honor.
Ang tanong ko is, bakit, according to the witness, tumba na si Major Indamog, tinamaan na nung nakapixelize na pulis sa gilid na bumaril sa kanya, tumba na si Indamog, gumagapang lang. Nakita niya na ikaw naka-t-shirt ka na puti. May finishing shots ka pa. Tinira mo sa likod si Major Indamog. Sa likod. That can be proven through the autopsy report. Puro likod ang tama.
Wala
Sige
po.
nga.
Wala po, wala.
Hindi mo binaril? Yung natumba na?
Hindi na, Your Honor.
Hindi na?
Opo.
Well, sinabi yan ng witness. Ha? Sinabi yan ng witness. 4. Tsaka, naintindihan kita na ikaw yung masyadong parang agresibo sa trabaho na yon, kayong mga taga-PDEO, dahil kayo nga, pakiramdam niyo, kayo ang minumonitor ng mga army, dahil doon sa malapit sa bahay ninyo, nakikita niyo yung Montero na van na yon. Kaya alam ko yung feeling mo, pero hindi pa rin justified na barilin yung mga tao. There's no, according to the Chief of Staff, there was no unlawful aggression. Bakit niyo binaril? But anyway, you stand by your statement na pagbaba, may dala-dalang import. Nakita rin naman doon na may baril doon. And, it has to be proven in court. Pero pag na-prove yan ng court, tapos prove yan na nag-lie ka dito, may liability ka pa rin namin dito sa committee ito. Dito sa Senado. Sa akin lang, is just to be fair with you. Sinabihan na kita, winarningan na kita daan. Winarningan na kita in advance. Okay?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, thank you. Go ahead. Go ahead, Senator Risa.
Salamat ay Mr. Chair. Follow-up question po kay Attorney Pagatpat ng NBI. Attorney, na-investigate nyo rin po ba yung allegations? Binanggit din po ni Sec. Anyo sa The Source. Allegations po ng CCTV tampering, considering wala pong actual clip nung shooting. At na-identify na po ba yung person in charge doon sa CCTV?
Well, may impression doon sa CCTV, no, Senator Riza, was that hindi ako nagsususpect ng tampering. Kasi yung nakakuha doon na nakakuha doon sa later na after the encounter, minamaneuver na nila yun yung rotating camera na itutok doon. But beforehand, before nangyari yun, iba ang portion na nakukover. Kaya nga sabi nila, dead spot. Kung makita mo yung nandito may NBI, yung ano yung sinabi ng mga operator ng CCTV na City Hall ng Jolo. Dead spot. So, can you elaborate on that, Attorney Gamo, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, after we comment on the CCTV footage, would we be given the chance to explain or comment on the alleged tampering of the crime scene? Because we also have observations and findings as regards that allegation.
Please, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
As regards the CCTV, ma'am, the PTZ1, we did not find any tampering as regards to CCTV footage. In fact, we were able to take the statement of the operator of the CCTV footage. So at first, at the outset, the CCTV camera was actually pointed toward the junction. Kasi po, ito po yung daanan ng mga sasakyan. So initially, it was pointed to that area. And then later on, when the operator heard gunshots coming from dito nga po sa tapat ng BFP, that was the time that it was panned or turned. However, up to that, tapos na. Tapos, sir. Because if you take a look at the report of the National Bureau of Investigation, it only took seconds na mangyari ang shooting incident. Precisely nung marinig nga po yung putok at napan na po yung CCTV camera, ay tapos na po. Ang makikita niyo na lang po doon sa CCTV footage ay yung palakad-lakad ng mga members ng police, ng Philippine National Police. At noong afterwards, dumating ang mga miyembro ng Philippine Army. Yun na lang po ang nakikita doon. But the act of shooting, no. And as to the allegation of tampering the CCTV footage, we do not believe there was.
Alright. Thank you, Attorney Tigamot. Salamat kay Mr. Chair.
Yes, General Gamboa.
Although I'm not allowed to ask questions because these are strict parliamentary rules, I've also learned or just heard that those who are manning the operation center in the Jolo Municipal Operation Center, wherein PNP and AFP personnel may be found in that operation center. Just an information, Mr.
Noted, General Gamboa. Thank you very much. Please, Attorney Triambolo.
Yes, sir. That's the possible tampering of the CCTV camera, sir. That is one of the directives coming from the BOI of the PNP to the Social Audit Team headed by General Acorda to subject the CCTV footage to examinations to our cybercrime in order to detect if there is tampering. And another also is to look a person who first upload that CCTV footage on the social media. Baka meron po siyang baka meron siyang sariling kuha na doon, lalo na doon sa pangyayari. But the report said negative ang tampering ayon sa examination. And second, yung pinapublish sa social media is also coming from the yung CCTV na manned by the
So we have to wind up. Before we wind up, General Coronel, if you have something to say.
No, sir, I don't have anything to say other than what has already been earlier stated by the Chief PNP. Like the Armed Forces of the Philippines, we're also looking forward to see that justice be done in this particular case because it involves both personnel from the AFP and the PNP. Fully cooperate. That's all, sir.
Thank you. About the RD of PRO Bar, General Abo.
Thank you very much, sir. First and foremost, sir, I would like to reiterate our deepest sympathy and condolences and apology to the family, to the AFP hierarchy, to the PMAAA. Because as a PMAR, sir, it's very hurting for me that two of our underclassmen were killed in that unfortunate incident. As a police officer, it's also very hurting for me that two of our listed personnel, supposedly our comrades in arms, were also killed in that fateful day. And please also understand that my situation, that I, as the regional director of PRO Bangsamoro Autonomous Region, is also my responsibility over my people. So with that, sir, I think that the PNP and the AFP should have a better coordination. And as a matter of fact, upon receipt of your memo, that we have to submit our position for this particular incident in aid of legislation. And I have prepared my presentation, sir, for better understanding, appreciation, and elucidation on this particular incident, sir. If I may, sir.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, sir.
Go ahead. Andyan ba? Meron tayo dyan? Paki-play. Gaano kahaba yan?
I'll be presenting to you the details of those incident and the position of Police Regional Office of Zamora Autonomous Region in some issues there. Next slide. Shown on the screen is the sequence of 5% facts of the case, chronology of events, notable statement from source persons during the joint PFP board inquiry conducted last July 7 to 10, 2020 at Jolo. Lessons learned from the incident and the position of Filipino PNP proper and our recommendation. Next slide. Shown in this slide is the facts of the case that at about 40 p.m. of June 29, 2020, shooting incident transpired at the vicinity of City Marina, Barangay World City, Jolo, Sulu, between the personnel of Jolo MPS and members of provincial drug enforcement unit of Jolo and members of the forces of the Philippines that resulted in the death of 4 members of the latter who were allegedly conducting intelligence operation in the area.
We know already all the facts, the case.
Yes, sir.
Diretso ka na sa yung hindi natin na-take update. Kaya pagkitin mo na lang yung importante na hindi natin.
Okay, sir. In the chronology of events, shown on the screen is this slide. Next slide. Chronology of events. So, to June 29, about 2 in the afternoon, Police Captain Cursino received a telephone call from Patrolman Mandangan stating that Patrolman Jirudin, residing at Barangay Busbus, was informed by his uncle at the Gray Montero near checkpoint 1 at Barangay Busbus. A picture of the Montero was taken by the uncle of Patrolman Jirudin. Patrolman Jirudin described the Gray Montero. Patrolman Mandangan informed Police Captain Cursino that it was the same SUV that was seen at Barangay Chinese Square on June 26, 2020, also parked near his house. Then, Police Captain Cursino instructed this man to coordinate with the law PS for assistance. On that same day, Patrolman Mandangan went to Jolo MPS. It was Police Senior Master Sergeant Pajiri, team leader, together with his team, who assisted Patrolman Mandangan and Patrolman Patalan in accosting the Gray Montero Barangay Busbus. The team boarded the police car and went to the information place. The gray SUV was accosted at the checkpoint, while Patrolman Mandangan approached the Gray Montero. The occupants of the Gray Montero, particularly the front passenger side, rolled down the window and informed that Patrolman Mandangan that they were tropa. But when asked to present ID or identification card, they did not present any identification card. Then Police Sergeant, Senior Master Sergeant Pajiri approached the Gray Montero and said, "If you cannot present ID and if you are really tropa, the police station na lang tayo mag-usap." After which, the Gray Montero and the police mobile headed to Jolo MPS. The police mobile tailing the Gray Montero subsequently stopped at the police station. However, Jolo MPS Montero is better and drove straight towards Martinez Street, Barangay San Raimundo, Jolo. This prompted the PNP personnel to chase the latter. The passenger alighted from the SUV, lifted and pointed the firearms towards the PNP personnel. Normal human instinct under the doctrine of self-preservation engulfed the PNP personnel in under imminent danger. Under imminent danger, the latter shoot in defense of themselves that resulted in the death of the 4, later identified to be members of the armed forces of the community. Next slide. This slide shows the statement of Captain Rico Tagure, Armed Forces of the Philippines, and Major Arnold Marcos. Rico Tagure, he and his companion had taken the firearms of died AAP members in the crime scene. Major Arnold Marcos said when he was asked on what to do in cases where they are hosted by PNP personnel, he answered, "In those cases, we need to break cover. We need to break cover." He also mentioned that pag hinuli, kusa lang sumasama sa police station. Next slide. The slide shows the statement of Colonel Antonio Bautista Jr., Armed Forces of the Philippines, and Police Colonel Michael Payan, the officer in charge of Jolo PPO. Colonel Bautista, the chairman of the Metro Jolo Task Group, and the commander of Red Arrow Interagency Task Group, admitted that he only knew the operation of Gray Montero after that unfortunate incident. Police Colonel Bawayan, the PDP Sulu.
Sandali. Klaro natin ito. Sinabi mo ito. Totoo ito? Colonel Bautista?
Bautista, sir.
Ha? Saan mo nakuha ito statement ito niya?
It's the result of joint inquiry, sir.
Ha?
Result of the joint inquiry.
Result of the joint
Yes, sir.
inquiry?
Yes, sir.
So, ikaw, dinay mo?
Last July 7 to 10.
Sige, papakinggan mo natin. Ano? Okay.
Colonel Bawayan mentioned.
Sandali. Pasagutin mo natin si Bautista.
Sir, I think that was a misquoted statement, sir. What we mentioned in the joint inquiry, we normally don't see actual intel operation because it's an intel operation. But we knew that we have Montero doing the unit and segment for us. But that statement, I don't agree with that statement.
Okay. Sino kumuha ito? Yung BOI? From the Board of Inquiry ito?
No, sir. The PPNP Board of Inquiry was conducted by General Acorda from June 7.
Okay, go ahead.
Colonel Bawayan, PDP Sulu mentioned that he conducted some inquiries with some informants and gathered that there was arrogance on the part of the occupants of the Gray Montero when they were flagged down into Sulu at the PNP checkpoint. And on that, sir, so that they will not have that confrontation in the street, the leader invited them to go with them to the police station so that the proper identification will be talked about or in the police station. Will be discussed in the police station. Next slide. This slide shows the additional statements of Police Colonel Wayan, Kino Sulu, and father said that the presented the matrix sleeping Corporal Abdal Sula, one of the AAP personnel killed the resident to a drug syndicate. Accordingly, they came to know about the link of Corporal Asula when they were able to know the names of the four victims. Several relatives of Corporal Asula were arrested, some were killed by PDEU personnel in the conduct of our anti-illegal drug operation earlier this year, sir. And as a matter of fact,
may mga pangalan kayo? Ilan yun? Ilan yung relatives niya?
Father of Corporal Asula was killed.
Brother?
Yes, sir.
Father?
Brother.
Brother. Ano ba?
Corporal Asula was killed by our PDEU personnel last March 14 operation conducted by the
March 14 of this year.
Yes, before my arrival, because I was assigned there just last March 18, 4 days before my arrival.
Okay.
Next. Lessons learned from the incident. The proper coordination is the key to prevent any similar blood incidents, as you said, sir. And that's also our observation. The use of informants or assets, interrogatory records, as well as hot cars or carnap vehicles in the operation shall be discovered. prevent misunderstanding with other law enforcement agencies. And as to the position of the PNP personnel,
Sandali, bakit mo nasabi hatkar? You mean to say, yung puntero na yun, hatkar yun? Yung gamit nila?
sir, the question on the ownership of the vehicle use is still under question.
Kanino pala yung sakyan? Hindi yung organic ng issue. Sino bang issue dito?
I would suggest sir, that the FBI should check on this on their deeper investigation on this.
Sige, go ahead.
And as to the position of our PRO, of the Wasam PRO bar in some notable issues, letter A, crime scene was contaminated by the responding AFP personnel, and even taking some pieces of evidence therein, such as firearms, communication equipment, personal belongings, and others, that greatly affects the credibility of the result of the crime scene processing and investigation.
Sagutin kita dyan. Alam mo, bakit nagkaganon? Dahil nga, walang pulis na nagkukontrol sa crime scene. Hindi mo indordon yung crime scene, which is automatic.
Sir, our people did not leave any. They just took over because galit na galit sir yung mga responding personnel. Kung nagkaroon lang sila puputok-tok kahit...
Sino hindi magalit? Sino hindi magalit? Patay yung kasama ng kapal eh. So galit na galit talaga dating doon. Pero sana kung may nag-control doon sa... ilang steps lang yun galing sa police station? Ilang meters?
About 60 meters, sir.
50 meters?
60.
Ha?
60, sir.
60 meters. Oh, kadali lang tumakbo yung mga tao ng police station doon yung area para ma-preserve yung crime scene. Pinabayaan ninyo.
Considering the number of the army, sir.
Well, anyway, we can consider that, but sige, continue.
Yes, sir. That discounted allegation that the PNP personnel had planted the evidence in the crime scene. Oh, we have a video clip on that. Another lesson learned is that the incident is not murder or assault, as claimed by some porters, but a legitimate police operation that resulted in an armed encounter. This is a result of the Rias Para reporter conducted last July 8. If there is an intent to kill, why the police operatives are wearing police uniforms and were using marked vehicle in a broad daylight in the center of Luzon? Letter C. Had there been proper coordination on the part of the PNP or the AFP rather, the territorial police units, or in the area, the said incident would have been avoided. Next slide. Assurance is the recommendation. Next slide. For consideration of this honorable committee, sir. A, the passage of a law on mandatory coordination and all operation to the territorial PNP units within the area of operation and corresponding penalty for failure to adhere therein. And letter B, the crafting of standard operating procedures between the PNP, AFP, and other law enforcement agencies on the conduct of coordination to prevent any similar incident, toward incidents in the future. So, sir, there should be timely coordination. That is my presentation, sir. God bless us all.
Maraming salamat. Thank you for that presentation. Well, we were advised by General Gap, I would like to respond.
This is just an objection or some clarification on the report. There are some inconsistencies also on the report. That is the report of a pro-barm, right? Which you headed. Okay, and there's also a report jointly by the POI, by the PNP and the AFP, which we are ready to present to really point out some inconsistencies presented by Manuel Abu. Police Brigadier General Manuel Abu. So, yun nga, sabi ko kanina, Mr. Chair, there's some speculations here and, conflicting reports, inconsistencies, and that's why we really have to file this in court so that all these speculations should be ironed out. And if you'll be given a chance to also present. Ito na yung joint DOI ng PNP and the AFP and Mr. Chair, if
can we make it just brief? Kasi mag 2 o'clock na. Mag-present na lang, please. I-play niyo. So, we're only given up to 2 o'clock dahil mag-rearrange itong session hall for the 3 o'clock session. Yung palabok, yung mga salient points lang. Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, while waiting for the presentation to be ready, would NBI be given the opportunity to explain its findings as regards the alleged tampering in the crime scene?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, po. Sir, let's start with the fact that at about 2:29, all the involved police officers actually left the crime scene because that can be found in the CCTV footage. 2:29. And then 4 minutes thereafter, members of the Philippine Army did arrive at the area. Well, according to them, their impression was that members of the ASG killed the members of the Philippine Army, precisely why they secured some equipment and firearms therefrom. Sir, for the information of this honorable committee, the 3 firearms were actually surrendered to the National Bureau of Investigation for examination. The Remington, the Glock 17, and 1 Uzi, sir. However, sir, since the experts in firearms identification and cross-matching found that none of the fired cartridges taken from or recovered from the crime scene and the body of Major Indamo matched with the firearms of the members of the Philippine Army, the test that was performed for these 3 firearms was serviceability, sir. Because, again, sir, if I may, all the 35.56 fired cartridges taken from the crime scene, 1 deformed bullet, 1 jacket, 5.56, and 4 9mm matched with the firearms of the members of the Philippine National Police and none with the Philippine Army. Now we go to the fired cartridges, sir, because at some point in the course of the investigation, there was an allegation that fired cartridges were recovered by the members of the Philippine Army. However, in the course of the investigation of the Bureau, sir, we found out that according to the BFP PTZ cameras starting from 3/18/26 onwards, you can find a member of the SOCO personnel, SOCO, sir, collecting pieces of fired cartridges from the right side of the Montero and placing it inside a Ziploc plastic bag without any marking. So let it be emphasized, sir, that the Bureau found out and observed such a doing of a member of the SOCO, sir.
Attorney,
yes, sir.
May I know kung yung sinasabi mo na pinulot ng SOCO na nilagay sa Ziploc,
yes, sir.
Was that included in the evidence na tinrasis kasama doon sa na-process na ballistic sa examination?
Sir, emphasize ko po na sa una pong report ng SOCO, in their initial report, they only indicated 15 fired cartridges. That excludes, sir, the 18 fired cartridges which I said were collected by a member of the SOCO and placed inside a Ziploc. However, in their previous report, in their subsequent report, sir, naisali na po yung 18 na yan. Ang makikita niyo po dun sa unang report, may nakamarking po silang 1 to 15 na fired cartridges. Absent the 18 na sinasabi ko, sir, na later can be found also in their report.
Okay.
For purposes ng tanong niyo po, kung naiprocess po itong mga bullets na fired cartridges na ito, opo, na cross-match po ito lahat ng Bureau. That's why we were able to issue a statement on the 34 fired cartridges, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Will be allowed to speak, Mr. Chair, for clarification, for
Yeah,
further
go ahead.
information.
Tapos ka na, attorney?
No, sir.
Si attorney Tremulo ay attorney Ikaw mo, tapos ka na?
Yes, sir.
Sige.
No, sir. Not yet, sir.
Sige.
Kasi naging importante po kasi siyang issue as regards tampering of the crime scene. Kaya po minabuti po ng Bureau na malaman kung ano nga pong nangyari doon sa sinasabing baril at mga fired cartridges. So yun nga po, nasa report naman po namin yan at na-emphasize naman po namin ang resulta ng investigasyon as regards to that alleged tampering in the crime scene.
Thank you. Meron pa? Attorney Tremulo?
With regards to your question to Police Brigadier General Abu, sir, regarding the statement of the Colonel Antonio Bautista that he saw for the first time after the shooting incident of the subject Montero. It is stated, sir, in the BOI report, which was crafted jointly by the PNP and AP. Page 27, sir, small letter O, it states here, sir, sa last sentence ng sa report, he further narrated that he saw the Montero issue for the first time when he responded to the shooting scene after the incident. That is the report, sir.
Do you concur, Colonel Bautista? That's coming from your BOI.
Sir, my statement a while ago that I was misquoted. What I was referring there in that statement, that I know of the intel operation doing by our troops, but we don't know what, because 9 ISU are not under directly to me in a day-to-day because they are only attached to me for the intelligence. That my statement in the joint point of inquiry was that was my first time to saw the tech ban, that Montero, but not the intel operation.
Yeah, okay nga. It's referring to the Montero yun ang sinasabi ng BOI report di ba? So that is true. You concur that the first time yung nakita after the accident yung Montero na yun, the tech ban.
Mr. Chair?
Sandali lang, Senator Reza.
Yes, sir.
Pula kay Colonel Bautista.
Sir, my statement, I saw the Montero on that incident, but what was mentioned in the report of General Abu, the operation of the Montero. I know the operation of the Montero, but seeing that Montero was my first time. That's two different things.
Seeing that Montero was the first time.
Yes, but I know the operation of that Montero.
You know the operation of Montero, pero hindi mo nakita. For first time mo nakita, doon nasa insidente na yon.
Yes, sir. But I know of the
operation
of that Montero.
Dapat kinlaro mo doon sa statement mo sa BOI para hindi ka ma-misquote. But yun, anyway,
because I was the one instructing the intel monitoring using that Montero. But that was my first time to saw that Montero.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Senator Risa.
Salamat kayo, Mr. Chair. Just my brief last note for this afternoon. Huwag po nating payagan ang anumang cover-up sa ginawa ng ilang miyembro ng PNP sa Armed Forces sa Jolo. Sorry po talaga, pero mukha talagang premeditated ang ginawang pagpatay. Otherwise, Mr. Chair, this whole thing simply doesn't make sense. I have a feeling that there are pieces of the puzzle we don't know. We still do not know the intent or the motive of the killing. We have the when, where, how, some of the who, Kasi halimbawa yung nakapula na sa video mukha namang mas matangkad kesa kay mas matangkad kay Patrolman Mandangan kesa kay Police Staff Sergeant Susulan na nandyan ngayon kasama natin. So magdududa talaga ang tao, bakit parang may iba, may mali. So we know some of the who, Mr. Chairman, but not the why. Hanggat di natin alam ang sagot sa why, hindi natin mabubuo ang kumpletong picture. At baka maulit pa ito. Who called the shots and why? We need the answers. And lastly, Mr. Chair, dahil nagde-deserve ng answers yung mga magulang ni Major Indamog na nagsabing yung asawa niya at anak nila ay nasa Kalinga pa, nagde-deserve ng sagot yung a few months pa lang na bride, asawa ni Captain Managelod, nagde-deserve ng sagot ang asawa at mga anak at mga magulang ni Sergeant Velasco. Nagde-deserve din ng sagot yung pamilya ni Corporal Asula na kanina lang ay binabansagan pa ng isang krimen. Salamat.
Senator Risa, tayong lahat ay nagde-deserve ng sagot.
Exactly, Mr. Chair. Dagang salamat.
Lahat tayo gusto ng sagot na yan. But anyway, since 2 o'clock na, pinapaalis na tayo dito ng USAA dahil submit mo na lang.
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Chair, anyway, it has been noted by
nasa akin na yung
joint report of the APCNP.
Yeah, meron na sa akin. So I can share with it sa buong committee. Salamat ha. Pasensya ka na kung hindi na kita pagbigyan dahil pinapaalis na tayo. Maraming salamat. So to wrap up everything, here are some proposed policy legislation na nakikita natin na pwede nating to work on for further study of the committee. Number 1 is higher penalty for government officials and employees violating Presidential Decree number 1829, penalizing obstruction, apprehension, and prosecution of criminal offenders. Current penalty is prison correctional in its maximum period 4 years and 1 day to 6 years. New penalty, prison mayor in its minimum period 6 years and 1 day to 8 years. Number 2, institutionalization of mandatory coordination of operating units of PNP, AFP, and other law enforcement agencies. Ito talaga, I cannot underscore the importance of this. Kailangan talaga natin itong gawin. Consultation with law enforcement agencies on the drafting of the bill to ensure the incorporation of the established practices. Nasasabi ko sa iyo kanina, please submit PNP. Possible, number 3, possible amendment to RA 8551 by providing rules of engagement and coordination to be done by PNP with other government agencies and military. Sama mo na dyan yung pagbabalik ng power to detain by the PNP. Number 4, possible amendment to Article 208 of the revised penal code by increasing penalty on dereliction of duty regarding prosecution of cases among law enforcement officers. Number 5, possible new law institutionalizing criminal investigation manual of PNP. So far, ito pang naisip namin. I hope that the AFP and the PNP will submit your recommendations para natin ito ma-institutionalize itong lahat ng gusto natin mangyayari. So from here, I think wala nang magsasalita kasi wala na tayong oras. Gusto na ako magpapasalamat sa inyo, sa NBI, for your patience, for your patience sa paghintay dito ng mahabang oras, for your very professional conduct of your investigation. Although nagkukulang nga lang dahil hindi nagbigay ang side ng PNP. But nevertheless, Attorney Zulaika Digamo, thank you for your very efficient handling of the case. salamat sa inyong investigasyon. Sa inyong lahat, Atty. Pagatpat, Atty. Normando Aniri, and Atty. Calob. Sa Armed Forces naman, maraming salamat sa inyong pagdating, at alam kong sakit pa rin kalooban ninyo, but time will heal. Time will heal, I hope. And sa PNP naman, maraming salamat. Lalong-lalo na't dinala mo yung siyam na mga ating mga resource speakers na /accused. So, thank you for coming. General Abo, relax ka lang. Mag-report ka kay General Gapay. Ha? Mag-report ka kay General Gapay. Test mo na. Mag-report ka. Dalawa yung operators mo to. Si General Binloano. Ha? Malakas mga ata yan. Mga ata ng playbo. Ate lang yun. Thank you sa inyong pagdating, at I hope naliwanagan tayo dito. Although there are still conflicting statements, we are not a court of law to determine culpability dito talaga, dahil sa atin dito is our primary objective is to establish policy considerations para to avoid the same incidents to happen in the future. So yun lang natin dito. So again, maraming salamat sa inyong lahat. And with that, Senator Risa, pwede ko lang i-adjourn?
Pwede, Chair. Salamat kaayo.
Maraming salamat. So this hearing is hereby adjourned.